Thank you to GMI Games for letting us film on their location.
Creation, imagination, the code that courses through humanity. Some people say it comes from God, some people say it's because our ancestors started cooking their food. But nonetheless, it defines one of the most beautiful aspects to the human condition. But what happens when we become super fixated on our creation? We become so obsessed with it that we even fall into our creation.
We are so back.
Welcome. Are you finding everything okay? I literally just walked in. No, I'm not talking about shopping. I just mean in general. Are you finding everything okay? I've got a group of friends I'm meeting up with. We haven't seen each other in quite a while. Last time we were all together, there were 5 of us. Not everybody knew each other, but there was one of us that everybody knew and knew everybody else. I see. He was the glue to your friend group. Right. The last time we were hanging out, we were chilling on this bridge, overlooking this shallow mass of water between 2 land masses. A channel, perhaps? I was thinking about a river, but yeah, sure. Well, that one friend, the one that brought the rest of us together, he jumped in. Oh, No. He's alive. He's alive. He just went missing. Nobody's seen him since. But it's important that everybody understands he didn't jump off the bridge. He jumped into the channel. Or river, sure, yeah. You're being a bit of a mope right now, but that's okay. That's all right. A game to bring friends together. Well, that takes Munchkin off the table. And you don't seem like the brightest bulb, so that takes Catan off the table as well. Sellers of Catan, that's not a hard game. I wonder if we still sell Small World. Now that was a sleeper game. However, here I have a hard drive. In it holds 2, potentially 3 cult classic games. Abandonware, lost media, that type of stuff. The first game is called Desk. You play as an unknown suspect being interrogated by a detective. Ah, one of my buddies would love that game. It doesn't end there. The kind of character you've been playing as for your playthrough is determined by the choices you make. Somehow, no matter what combination of choices you make, they retroactively make sense to the character you've been playing as all that time. Some speculate that this was some sort of early form of active learning AI that profilers and police were implementing, but it had a cult following. So, a sequel was made. Rip Shun. Ription? What the heck is that? No. Rip, Shun. Each character you fight, you have the choice to either kill or banish, or in other words, rip or shun. Sounds kind of brutal, but I could see our friends getting into that kind of stuff. But you said potentially 3 games? What do you mean by potentially? Yes, you're right. There was a rumor that was going around that within these 2 games, a 3rd installment was hidden. After people had their fun with Rip Shun, a lot of people abandoned it, but some people stuck around. Some people thought that there were mysteries still to be uncovered in these 2 games. You think with data mining that mystery would be solved by now. The only bits of evidence that stick out in these 2 games is a commented out bit of code in the 2nd game and a loose bitmap in the 1st game. I've collected these bits of evidence and put it in the same folder as the keygen on this hard drive. Hold on, keygen? You're selling me a bootleg? Does your computer have a floppy drive? I hate to admit it, but in this case at least, piracy and bootlegging is the saving grace of abandonware. Fine, I'll take it. This was a long time coming, but after covering Pony Island and the Hex, we're as prepared as we will ever be. This video is going to be a little bit different from the rest of my analysis videos. We're going to be gushing about a lot of things. The game mechanics, the card battle design itself. For those of you new to my channel, this isn't going to be your typical story analysis or recap video. This is going to be a fine-tooth combing through the entirety of Inscryption, at least to the best of my ability. Now, Now, before inscribing a description, to describe Inscryption, here's a couple of quick shoutouts. Shout out to Knucklebone, a talented artist, for this phenomenal sassy flaw peacock piece. Shout out to Killy2_O'Neill on Twitter for this cool piece. I like the background, it's a nice touch. Big shout out to Big Champ AK for this phenomenal Kino Tarot piece of my flaw peacock character. Here's a real keen piece by Indigo Drawin on Instagram. I really like the direction with this picture. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but I really like it. There's something otherworldly to the design. And finally, this real neat piece by King Ducky. You can find them on Instagram by king_ducky.jpeg_art. This is a phenomenal depiction of my favorite character of mine, Detective Viewer.
I almost forgot this one, hidden in the back of my emails. This one's by chk_.art on Instagram. I really like this one. It kind of looks like a courtroom drawing.
Now, on to the video. Inscryption is best described as a tightly designed card battle roguelike indie game, beautifully disguising a elaborate chain of conspiracy, mystery, and puzzles. But unlike most indie games with profound psychological mysteries or horror elements or artistic design, this one's actually very fun and satisfying, and I'll even say addicting to play. Many people have played Inscryption, enraptured by how tight and satisfying the design is, and by the end of it they're like, there was a story to that? And yes, there is a story to it. Even if you find card battle games to be a bit too technical, don't worry, I'm there with you. Inscryption will be the perfect gateway drug to MTG, Pokemon, Hearthstone, Cory in the House, Card Blitz. So please, if you haven't, give it a try. It's worth every penny. Now, this is going to be a huge investigation, jam-packed with themes, motifs, patterns, characters, aspects of characters from previous Daniel Mullins games. And so before getting into this investigation, I want to do a slight recap on what we covered in the Pony Island video and the Hex. This is the first time I'm ever doing anything like this, so forgive me if I miss some stuff. We'll start with Pony Island. I follow the theory that Pony Island is the story of Lucifer breaking out of hell. On top of that, it's the origin story to Satan's game dev career. Or I say Satan, Lucifer's game dev career. Aside from Lucifer the antagonist, there's also the deuteragonist, or person who helps the protagonist, the hopeless soul. This blue, cute little ghost glitch trapped in Lucifer's machine. Lucifer's main goal is to reap the player's soul, capture the player's soul. But a secondary secret goal that he secretly finds very important is that he wants to create a game that the player whose soul he's trying to reap enjoys. The hopeless soul trapped in this game wants the player to complete it, achieve a sense of closure, and thusly uninstall the game, freeing him from this machine. At first, one might think that these two characters, the hopeless soul and Lucifer, are at odds with one another. But based on some hints and investigation we do in my video of Pony Island, I'm of the mind that if they are not working hand in hand with one another, they are just full-blown one in the same. Combining their goals together, we get the player unwittingly playtesting Lucifer's game and then uninstalling it and freeing him into this world. Pony Island's a very fun game, and if I'm not mistaken, it's quite inexpensive on the Steam store. It's worth every penny and then some. I highly recommend it. Now on to the Hex. The Hex, in my opinion, is the culmination of Lucifer's game dev career. In Pony Island, his game company was called Satan Tech, a bit too on the nose, so now the game company is called Game Funa. Lucifer also goes by the name of Lu Natus. Lu short for Lucifer, Natus being Satan backwards. Mind you, this is my theory. It's not necessarily confirmed that this is the case in the Hex. The Lucifer from Pony Island and Lu Natus could easily be two completely different characters. In the Hex, Game Funa has this video game developing suite called GameWorks. Its purpose is to help budding game devs and amateurs generate artificially intelligent assets, NPCs, and characters, playable characters, for their video games. The twist is, unbeknownst to the users of the GameWorks, the characters they are generating and creating are sentient, fully aware beings, trapped in a digital prison at the mercy of Game Funa, or specifically at the mercy of the GameWorks. That's how it's depicted in the Hex. Now, you see, you and I, we naturally create delete, scrap, pause, abandon projects all the time. But imagine if those projects, or the assets that lived within those projects, were sentient. If that were the case, we'd have a lot of abandoned children. Inevitably, quite a bit of resentment will be generated, and the story of the Hex is the culmination of that resentment. Without spoiling too much of the Hex, it is essentially the story of video game characters getting revenge on a creator that abandoned them. And so, Lunatus, this devilish game company CEO, has, in the most diabolical way, simulated Lucifer's greatest fantasy: to kill God, get revenge on God, through the plot of these game characters getting revenge on their game dev creator. That's my theory, my takeaway that we'll be taking with us into Inscryption. If I need to remind or recall anything else, I'll do my best to be as concise but detailed as possible. I've taken up enough of your time, so let me rapid fire this. There are a handful of characters we want to keep in mind from the Hex and Pony Island. Obviously Pony Island, Lucifer and Hopeless Soul. From the Hex, there's this evil trickster clown by the name of Sado that escapes by the end of the Hex. We'll be keeping her in mind. Really, when it comes to the Hex, any character can re-emerge in Inscryption. But the ones that specifically come to mind are Reginald, the main force who seeks revenge in the Hex, and Jeremiah, the Renfield-like servant to Reginald that's described as twisted and malicious. Something's not right with him. Oh, and of course, Lunatus, the CEO of Gamefuna. Gamefuna, at the very least, will be re-emerging in Inscryption, and in a big way. I'll do my absolute best to keep this series analyzing Inscryption as standalone as possible, but ultimately, a lot of theories, patterns, motifs, and whatnot that I'll be fishing out will have been spawned from the pool of the Hex and Pony Island. So please, if you can only do one of two things in your life, watch this video or play the entirety of Daniel Mullins' games, play all of Daniel Mullins' games. Now enough talk. Let's take a deep dive beneath the surface in our exploration of Daniel Mullins' masterpiece, Inscryption. We start off with a simple play button. This play button is much like what we would see on a video playback device. We can even see this sort of grid-like overlay that reminds me a bit of a camcorder. We then hear a narrator of sorts.
Okay, time to figure out what's on this thing.
I'm going to go ahead and jump the shark gun here. This character whose voice we're hearing is Luke Carter. He is a big collectible card game battle enthusiast. Keep him in mind. After an equally keynote and simple title screen, we enter the main menu. For some reason, the new game button is glitched. Our only option is to click continue, so we are continuing from the previous owner's save. So we're entering in the midst of a continuity. Who was the previous owner of this game? While we're here though, let me go ahead and point out an interesting motif or recurring theme. The title itself has such a beautiful hiding in plain sight double meaning. The title Inscryption brings to mind two ideas. The actual word inscription, or to inscribe, meaning to write or etch onto something, like perhaps how we inscribe onto paper. Think about collectible cards. In essence, two collectible cards are made of the same material, the same ink, color, paper, and yet an MTG, a coveted peacock, is actually not so coveted, only selling at around 25 cents, whereas a Black Lotus sells for around $500,000. These two cards are made of the same thing, but because of what they represent, they're valued and seen differently. We treat it as if the essence of the card itself is changed based on what has been inscribed onto it. So on top of the title of Inscryption bringing to mind this pseudo-magical inscribing onto cards, the CRYPT in Inscryption brings to mind the concept of encryption, hiding bits of data by scrambling them and hiding them behind obfuscations and ciphers and whatnot, the bread and butter of Daniel Mullins' ARGs and games and mysteries and whatnot. I've dwelled enough on this titular titillation. Let's go ahead and move on with the game itself. Continuing where the previous owner left off, we come face to face with an eerie scene.
Another challenger. It's been ages. Perhaps you have forgotten how this game is played. Allow me to remind you.
Our card game master enters a tutorial sequence.
Play the squirrel card. Now play your stoat. Stoats cost 1 blood. Sacrifices must be made. An honorable death. Now play the stoat.
Sacrifices must be made, the overall theme to this mysterious Game Master's playstyle. I'll jump ahead a little bit and just point out that this mysterious GM has an affinity for nature, the natural order of things being held up by predation. The squirrel eats the acorn, the stoat eats the squirrel, the wolf eats the stoat and squirrel. The blood economy aspect of this game is one of 2 that will emerge throughout this first act of Inscryption. While some animals prefer fresh blood and flesh, some prefer decay. But I get ahead of myself. Let's keep playing.
Wolves require 2 sacrifices. You don't have enough. Ring the bell to end your turn and commence combat.
This game is simple enough. We take turns placing cards down and must do 5 damage to our enemy. Specifically, we have to do 5 damage more than our enemy has done to us. So let's say I'm damaged for 2 points. I would have to do 2 points of damage to rebalance the scales and then do 5 more to tip it against my opponent. So in that case, 7 damage. Squirrels are essentially our economy. They can be placed down freely and serve the primary purpose of being sacrificed for more powerful cards. In this case, I can put down a squirrel and sacrifice the stoat and squirrel for a more powerful wolf. But I don't want to sacrifice the poor stoat, at least not while he's sleeping, so I'll skip this turn for now and draw another squirrel. Now I have enough squirrels to place down a wolf without sacrificing the stoat. A part of me wonders if this is suboptimal play.
Four damage dealt. 4 weights on the scale. You've won this match. They won't all be so easy.
Most card games have some sort of economy. Pokemon has energy cards. You need energy cards in order to play your Pokemon and their various moves. Magic the Gathering has lands. You need these lands to maintain your spells and maintain all of your summonables on the board. And so there are varying play styles. Do you spend time building up your card economy, surviving early game blows while you get cards in your hand and put down your lands or energy cards? Or you strike hard, strike fast, and strike early? Whatever you have in your hand, throw it onto the board. Or do you do something a little bit in the middle, a sort of delayed early game response? Build up just enough cards so that you can do an early game relentless onslaught. In Magic you have lands, in Pokemon you have energy, and in Inscryption you have squirrels. But there's something that's unique about Inscryption is that you can sacrifice any card to summon more powerful, costly cards. So in a way, it's not just the squirrels, but all of your cards that make up your card economy. It's because of the self-cannibalistic nature to these decks that Inscryption is more weighted towards early game aggressiveness. The Game Master himself even encourages us to sacrifice our stoat and squirrel to summon the mighty wolf. This game design perfectly fits this apex predator theming of our Game Master. The best defense is a good offense. There is no pageantry in the hunt. The slash of a claw, the locking of a jaw around the neck of a poor alu samosa spells one of many victories for the predator and a final defeat, a game over for the prey. Let's go ahead and break this down for demonstration purposes. Now, to make this less overwhelming, I'm only putting 2 card slots in our demonstration, but remember you can put up to 4 cards onto the game board. We start off our hand in this tutorial with a stoat, a wolf, and a squirrel in our hand. The stoat does 1 damage and costs 1 card, or 1 squirrel. The wolf does 3 damage and costs 2 sacrifices, so 2 squirrels, a stoat and a squirrel, 2 stoats if you somehow get 2 on there. And of course, the squirrel does 0 damage and costs nothing to put down. It's just fodder. We need a total of 5 damage in order to beat Leshy. So let's go ahead and do what Leshy tells us to do. Let's play aggressively. So we start with our hand. We can't draw any cards because this is our first turn. We sacrifice the squirrel, so we place the squirrel down, we sacrifice it, and we put our stoat on the board. We ring the bell, end our turn, and we do 1 damage against Leshy. We still have the wolf in our inventory. And the stoat is on the playing field still. We have a choice. Draw a main card from our main deck or a squirrel card from our squirrel deck. Well, if we draw a main card, it's a very small chance that we're going to be able to play anything. But we can draw a squirrel card. So we draw a squirrel card. Place the squirrel down. We have 2 cards on the playing field. We sacrifice the squirrel, the stoat. That gives us 2 sacrificial points, enough to purchase the wolf. So we throw the wolf on the board. With the wolf on the board, now we do 3 damage. But that's a total of 4 damage. Just 1 underneath the required 5 damage to beat Leshy. We have a wolf on the board and nothing in our hand. No matter what we draw from the deck, there's not much that we can do. We could maybe draw a squirrel to throw it on this empty space, but it essentially delays the inevitable. That being said, if your wolf does survive this on its own, you do 3 more damage, and that's 7 damage in total. 2 more than the needed 5 damage. But this is assuming that Leshy isn't playing any cards in retaliation, in defense and offense, which is seldom the case. Chances are the game hasn't ended at this point. Leshy has done enough damage to you to offset the 7 damage and put you still just under the requirement. But now at this point, you have nothing in your hand. You just have that wolf and it's soon going to get murked. You'll have to draw a squirrel card and draw a main card, and if that's not enough for the main card, you have to draw another squirrel card. 3 turns recouping your economy. That halt breaks what I'm going to call your tempo. Is that 2 extra damage worth sacrificing everything in your hand and banking everything on this single wolf? I didn't write this down, but the wolf only has 2 health. 2 damage, it's done. We don't need to burn our economy. Animals play this way. But we are not animals. We are human. We can outsmart the animalistic nature of our Gamemaster. We'll do the same thing that we did on our first turn. We sacrifice the squirrel and play our stoat. But this next turn, don't be so eager to sacrifice your stoat. Instead, draw your squirrel card, but keep it in your hand. Next turn, draw another squirrel card. Now you have 2 squirrels, 2 sacrifices. You can go ahead and sacrifice them. Throw your wolf onto the board. The damage spread on the first strategy was 1, then 3, then 3, to a total of 7. In this case, it's 1. Damage 1 on the first turn, 1 damage on the second turn, totaling of 2 from the second turn. And then with the stoat and wolf on the board, that's 4 damage, which takes it up to 6. 1 more than the 5 damage needed to beat Leshy. Now technically at this point your card economy has still grinded to a halt, but you maintain a lot more survivability. By holding back your economy, you're able to react. Maybe you should play aggressively, but maybe delaying would help a bit more. The stoat has 3 health. That's 1 more health than the wolf has. In a defensive fight against a coyote, the wolf loses. In a defensive fight against a stoat, the stoat wins. But in the end, is this the objectively better way to play? No, I think this is the better mindset to have. Because if you marry this idea, you're stuck here. If you marry this idea, you can always pivot. In the end, play reactively, based on what you see on the board. And here's the thing, you're not meant to win every single fight. Some battles, especially in this first run, aren't meant to be won, so don't take it personally. In the end, sacrifices must be made. We beat our opponent. For the sake of ease, I'll refer to our opponent and Gamemaster by his name, Leshy. His name won't be revealed until the start of Chapter 2, but I'd rather just get that out of the way now.
Now let me recall your story. Ah, yes.
The overworld of this card game is made of paths that lead to various events. This next one makes us choose a card.
2 denizens of the forest approached you tentatively. The caustic adder. Damage from its poison bite is always lethal.
Now don't let the 1 damage of the adder fool you. Its venom can fell any card in one hit. I know we just completed this segment, but I want you to pay attention to the design of this game, the philosophies of this game. Look at the sigils that we have access to. The venomous enchantment or touch of death sigil to the snake, the adder, insta-kills any card no matter how tanky they are. Leshy has designed this game with sigils that incentivize rip-roaring, early game attacking playstyles and disincentivizes tanky, slow-building playstyles. Why would I build a bunch of slow, tanky cards when they could just be destroyed by the touch of death sigil? The same rules apply to other sigils like Unkillable, Corpse Eater, Many Lives, which incentivize reckless, self-cannibalistic playstyles. And we'll find those sigils soon enough. So this is that's the first card lesson segment of this. What do you guys think? Did I do a good job? You want to play card games now? Want to play some Hearthstone? Want to play some Core in the House Card Blitz?
The undying cat. Sacrificing the poor beast does not kill it.
The one-hit killing adder is neat, but I prefer the cat. Its Many Lives buff, or sigil, makes it so that when you sacrifice it, unlike a squirrel, it won't die. It's a very mid-game card, bloating your starting hand and bloating your board, but allowing you to really pick up momentum, not needing to rely so heavily on squirrels. The cat on its own isn't very good. It's a bit of a noob trap, but there's a more crafty reason as to why I like to run this card on the first run.
Some of the creatures of the forest seemed willing to follow you. You came across an abandoned sack. You found a squirrel in a bottle, break in case of emergency. And have a second. Another useful implement. I'll allow you to tip the scales with it. 3 is as much as you can carry.
This is the item bag event. These items can be used at any point during a battle and can help tip the scale in our favor. My favorite are the squirrels because they allow us to expedite our early game economy.
You were ambushed while crossing some rough terrain. You didn't sacrifice me. How kind. Maybe you'll help me? Take your turn. Play along for now. You may now see my moves ahead of time.
The stoat is talking to us. It seems to be more aware than the other cards. I'm glad we didn't sacrifice it. The noble stoat, eh? More like the backbiting stoat. If you keep this slippery knot weasel in mind, that would be a bad play. No, but in all seriousness, keep this in mind. I set up my economy, sacrificing a squirrel to place the cat, and sacrificing the cat without killing it to place my stoat.
Mind the ambitious wolf cub. It ages swiftly.
The wolf pup. It has this sigil called the fledgling sigil. After one turn, it will upgrade the card. In this case, the wolf cub will grow up into a wolf. Now, since the boulder is blocking our way, we can't beat it before it transforms. I put down a river snapper, and the bat approaches my stoat.
The airborne bat flies over creatures to attack directly. Ha! My bat flew right over your stoat.
I can do plenty of damage here, but to really add some style points, I sacrifice the river snapper to pivot into a wolf, Leshy assures us.
Fear not, the beast is sacrificed, but not removed from your deck. Its suffering was real, however, but you will see it again.
Jeez, so anytime we sacrifice something, it still suffers. Now I really don't want to sacrifice the stoat, even if he does return to my deck after every card battle.
You prevailed and trekked onwards past the now bloody terrain. A young wolf cub. It grows into a wolf after a single turn. A meek sparrow, an inexpensive if feeble flying creature.
In this case, I prefer the wolf cub. It's a 1-cost card, or in other words, it only costs 1 sacrifice, and if you keep it alive for a turn, it will transform into a wolf. An economically sound investment, in my opinion. Cards like these pair very well with the waterborne sigil. I will be getting into game mechanics and stuff like that insofar as its relevancy to this video, but as far as the high-octane strategy stuff, maybe I'll save that for the last chapter when we get into Casey's mod. This concept I'm Daniel mulling over is this concept of value. Let's say you have a choice between two cards to put in your deck. You have a wolf cub or a wolf. The wolf cub is a 1-cost 1/1 card, meaning it costs 1 sacrifice or 1 squirrel. It does 1 damage and has 1 health. However, it has a sigil that evolves the card into a wolf after the first turn. The wolf is a 3/2 card, 3 damage, 2 health. The wolf card itself costs 2 sacrifice. So the wolf cub itself costs 1 sacrifice, but potentially grows into a 2-cost card, but the wolf itself, a 2-cost card, does a lot of damage up front. Which one has more value? Let's say we played the wolf cub. On turn 1, the wolf cub does 1 damage. On turn 2, it's evolved into a wolf, now doing 3 damage, a total of 4 against Leshy. And on turn 3, it continues doing damage, 3 damage, that's 7 damage against Leshy. What if we played the wolf? On turn 1, the wolf would do 3 damage, then a total of 6, then a total of 9. Well, that's a clear difference. That's 2 more damage than the wolf cub on turn 3. In fact, you could even argue you beat Leshy on turn 2, doing 6 total damage. But when do you ever play a wolf card on turn 1? It costs 2 sacrifices. If you're at the point of the game where you can play a wolf on turn 1, you don't even need to consider this value concept. You've already won at that point. You haven't just won the battle, you've won the game of Inscryption, that specific run. Under normal circumstances, you can't play the wolf until turn 2. So on turn 1, you're doing 0 damage. The wolf itself is doing 0 damage. I'm sure you have stuff on the board doing damage like a stoat or a bullfrog, but we're talking about the values of these cards that you extract from these cards. So anyways, on turn 1, 0 damage. Turn 2, you play it, 3 damage. Turn 3, 3 damage, total of 6. So the cub is just better because no matter what, you need 1 turn setup time. So is that it? Is that the value difference between a cub and a wolf is 1 point of damage? No. Remember how much it costed to put the wolf cub down, to put the wolf down. How much damage are you extracting from each squirrel that you've sacrificed to put these cards down? The wolf cub is very simple to evaluate. It requires 1 squirrel. So on turn 1, the rate is 1 damage per squirrel. Turn 2, 4 damage per squirrel. Turn 3, 7 damage per squirrel. That is insane value. Even in the best case scenario, turn 1 wolf, that's 2 squirrels. 3 divided by 2 is a damage of 1.5 damage per squirrel. 6, 3 damage per squirrel. 9, 4.5 damage per squirrel. So it's only like barely outpacing on turn 1, and that's even if you play a wolf on turn 1. It's even more abysmal here. 1 damage per squirrel. 1.5, sorry. 1.5 damage per squirrel. 3 damage per squirrel. Look at that. In both of these scenarios, in both of these normal scenarios, you're going to have a wolf on turn 2. The difference is you're getting a lot more wolf for your buck with the wolf cub than you are the wolf. Does that mean the wolf sucks? Is shit, never take it? Not at all. We are evaluating these sort of quantitative values, damage values of these cards. But in the end, good card players can evaluate cards numerically or creatively. Great card players can do both. The wolf card is tied with one other card as the highest damage 2-cost card in Leshy's Inscryption, making it a phenomenal finisher card. Let's say you have these cards, right? You have cards as maybe it's a stoat and a bullfrog, okay? And they're fighting, right? You've got these 2 cards, they're in like they're locking heads with each other, and you've got a wolf on standby. You can sacrifice these 2, put the wolf here, you hit first, you win the game. Assuming you have 2 damage against Leshy. The wolf is uniquely a finisher card. So long as you have 2 damage against Leshy, if you play that wolf on an open space, you win. It's a finisher. And only 2 cost. You can't do that with a wolf. It needs setup time. It can die within that setup time. Is the stoat a shit card? I don't like the Stoat that much, but even I have to admit, it's got some good value. The Stoat does 1 damage, can take 3 damage. If you put your Stoat down and a coyote comes and hits it, the Stoat will survive and retaliate and kill the coyote. So even in a defensive, which under most circumstances puts your cards at a disadvantage, even in a defensive scenario, the Stoat nullifies the power of the coyote, nullifies the power of a bullfrog. 2 of Leshy's most favorite cards to play in like all the basic card battles. So even the Stoat, the basic bitch Stoat, has phenomenal value, so long as you know how to use it creatively. Here's another one. The cockroach. I'm going to emphasize it so for the YouTube poopers, make a YouTube poop out of me. The cockroach does 1 damage, has 1 health, costs 4 bones. That's dog shit.
Oh, but no, it's unkillable.
So what if it's unkillable? At a cost of 4 bones, I'm only going to be able to play it once and it does 1 damage? Well, then why the hell is this my favorite card to pick whenever it comes up? Because its value is not itself as a card, but for its sigil. Remember, this game does not start and stop during the battles, but also beyond the battles with the various events. You can put that sigil on a wolf cub or a wolf, gravy. That is what makes Inscryption such a great gateway drug to card games, is that it allows you to be creative with how you evaluate value. You can be artistic and fun and create cool different sigils, or you can be a blue MTG player and just break it all down with the DPS. Damage per squirrel. Full disclosure, this was my favorite. Out of all the lessons, this one's my favorite. I love this one. Once in a while, we have the opportunity to sacrifice a card to place its sigil on another. These events are absolutely key in creating powerful decks. Remember those 2 early game playstyles I talked about? Sacrificing the cat to give the Stoat many lives will allow us to do both of those strategies, play our 2-cost cards early while keeping our Stoat alive. Also, getting rid of the cat will keep our deck from getting too bloated with 1-cost cards. I'll explain why we want this very shortly, but for now, let's indulge the Stoat's first increase in power. We enter a different kind of card battle.
Behold my totem. It inscribes my canine cards with the airborne sigil.
Totem battles modify a specific clan of cards on Leshy's side. These modifications range from trivial to downright busted. While most flying cards are typically on the weaker end, the powerful glass cannon canines, like that of wolves and coyotes, can end our fight if we don't take advantage of their glass cannon nature. Here's something to consider. Flying cards ignore the opposing card in front of them, so I can place my fledgling wolf cub in front of either the flying coyote or bat, and they have no risk of being harmed by these enemies. I personally will still take the damage, but that's a small cost for a powerful mid-game. Sacrifices must be made, and that rule still applies to the player. Still though, we are in a losing situation. We are 1 damage away from being utterly defeated. Even if we kill the enemy coyote, the bat will finish us off. In these unwinnable scenarios, items come in clutch. We can speed our economy along by breaking open a squirrel bottle and sacrificing our 2 squirrels to place down another wolf to accompany our first wolf. I placed the wolf in front of the bat, and since both our enemies are dead, we have more room to make up for Leshy's powerful early game lead. I placed a river snapper down, which is unnecessary. It will do enough damage to beat Leshy before his wolf cub has a chance to upgrade. But still, this showcases that just because a card might only do 1 damage, that's enough to provide quite a bit of value if used well.
Impressive. You may yet survive this ordeal. Knock on wood. The monstrous grizzly. Its form speaks enough for its efficacy. The stalwart snapper, a near impenetrable defense.
I pick the adder, then right after sacrifice it to give my snapper the venomous sigil. I think it's technically called Touch of Death sigil. A tanky card that can one-hit any card it faces is a nightmare to deal with, and a great way of controlling a section of the board. That being said, Remember what we talked about regarding value. The snapper's cost of 2 sacrifices does make it so that we are less likely to actualize this value. That's how early game heavy I feel Leshy's Inscryption is. 1 cost cards are always in play, 2 cost cards are barely ever in play, and 3 cost and 4 cost, you almost never see them because it's just so like beat the game in 1, 2, or maybe 3 turns kind of thing. Now, this next battle is set for us to lose. There is no way we could reformat our hand with the cards we have to make this work. Leshy is playing a 3 cost card on his first turn. Before taking this L, I want to point something out. This may seem like a card battle game, and for all intents and purposes, it is. But Leshy isn't bound to the same rules we are. He can play 3 cost Grizzlies on turn 1. And if you notice, he doesn't sacrifice anything. He just places whatever animals he wants on his side of the deck. He does this in a sort of pre-scripted manner. In any card battle, the only things that will change are the order in which he will use these cards and where he places them. But each card that he dishes out is not totally randomized. Leshy's trials may be framed as if they are card games, but they are best treated and seen as puzzles. And we use Leshy's game to craft the pieces ourselves, collecting the cards, forming our deck, buffing our cards, sacrificing cards, merging them together. At this point, him playing all these powerful cards on turn 1 seems like cheating, but as we play the game and think up newer ways to make our deck work for us, it'll start to seem like we are cheating. Much later, if not in this specific chapter in this game, Leshy's general philosophy to his game's design will become more apparent, but for now, we will treat him as our adversary. The Grizzlies maul us, and a candle is blown out to signify a loss of 1 life. Oh, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. There is no candelabra.
You've lost. Using this as a learning opportunity may be the only way to mitigate my disappointment. Get up. Get up from the table. Fetch me the candlestick from atop the barrel beside the door.
We stand up and fidget with the various fixtures. There's a hammer and paintbrush to our left. Note that they're bolted to the wall, locked away from player use. There's a hammer and paintbrush to our left, locked up, pinned to the wall, so we can't access them. Leshy seems to not like these tools. Something about them go against his game design. The hammer and paintbrush will re-emerge in Act 2 and 3, and represent 2 game mechanics that evidently are incompatible with Leshy's game philosophy. More on this in a moment. Keep this in mind, however. I fidget with the clock, lining up all the arms to the midnight position, and accidentally trigger this secret. So setting the cuckoo clock to 11 yields us this ring.
Does it fit?
Its use won't be apparent until much later, but don't worry, we aren't really jumping the gun too hard with this one. The hint that points us towards setting the clock to 11 o'clock isn't too hard to find out. We will return to this clock, however. Quickly, side note, isn't it interesting? We set the clock to 11 o'clock, 11:11:00, and we get a ring, a 0. There's a lot of interesting hidden binary theming in this game. It's very interesting. It's one of Daniel Mullins' favorite motif. But anyways, let's move on. Approaching the safe, we see a hand retreat behind it. Perhaps this ghostly hand is telling us to investigate this safe. I fidget with the safe. If there were 4 dials, I would have tried 2734. This is Hopeless Soul's password from Pony Island. But alas, there are only 3 dials. More on that later. We investigate a locked cabinet and fidget with a knife. It seems the mechanism is missing a hexagonal shape. Or in other words, a hex. Probably a coincidence. But I wouldn't be a scuffed cassowary if I didn't point out the possible callback to the hex. We snuff out a candle and its smoke is captured in the glass above. We must return to this contraption and do this 2 more times consecutively to get a special boon. We spin the globe, and I notice it isn't a globe of Earth, but a globe of some other mythical place. I can see a distinct archipelago in the shape of phalanges, metacarpals, and carpals, oh my. A bony hand, a skeletal hand. Something tells me Act 2's got a lot of juiciness there. Goodness gracious. We turn to the door, and after fiddling with the door, we pick up the candlestick, which will serve as an indicator for how many lives we have in each run.
Bring it here. Now sit back down. Let me explain something to you. That was one of the 2 mistakes you can make here. If you make another, I must sacrifice you. Now, where were we?
I pick up another cat in hopes we'll get the chance to sacrifice it for its sigil. Right now, our deck is looking to be a bit sparse. This might be painful in the coming boss fight. But before that, we have a campfire event.
You came across a small group of survivors. Faces shrunken from starvation, they huddled around a campfire. They looked upon your group of creatures and beckoned. "Come warm one of your creatures by the fire," one said. "Warm it by the fire, that will enhance its power," said another. You noticed one of the survivors wiping drool from their mouth.
This event gives us the chance to upgrade a card of our choice. I believe after our 3rd run, there will always be a chance that the campfire dwellers will eat our card whenever we upgrade it at the campfire. But right now, there's no chance of that happening.
A fire warmed the poor cat, enhancing its power. One of the survivors reaches towards it. Another gnashed their teeth. Without a word, you pulled the cat away from the fire and left.
Just so my deck is somewhat consistent, I give my cat the upgrade. This will ensure that all of my 1-cost cards do at least 1 damage. We reach the end of the map and enter our first boss fight.
The trees seemed to close in around you as a chill mist descended. In the distance, you could hear the clinking of metal on ore. A hobbled figure stood in your path. "Yeehaw! 'Twas the prospector."
We face off against a tanky but otherwise harmless mule. It wants to move to the right, that's what its arrow sigil indicates, but a coyote stands in its way. It seems Leshy has placed some cards underneath the mule. We can try to pop the mule and get what it's carrying, but we also need to dispatch the coyote, and once we do that, the mule will start to move over a space every turn, making it all the harder to pop, or in other words, defeat.
Using our pliers, we give ourselves a slight advantage.
A well-earned point. I didn't think you would really do it.
Now you may wonder why I placed my wolf cub on the 2nd turn instead of playing it on the 1st. I want the coyote to strike first so I could respond with the cub. If I had placed the cub first, the coyote would kill my cub, robbing me of its evolved wolf form. And so, this is ultimately the core of the card game. What do you fear losing more? 2 measly health points, or the potential of a 3-tool wolf that only costs 1 blood? What commodity in the form of these cards can provide you more value as a player? As cute and cuddly as a squirrel may be, I have more use for a better card. Sacrifices must be made. Anyways, the main goal is to beat Leshy with our newly evolved wolf. We do enough damage to blow out one of Leshy's candles.
I hope you didn't think it would be that easy. There's gold in them cards.
What? Damn! I worked hard for that wolf, and now he's dead?
Gold! I've struck gold!
At the start of the 2nd phase, the prospector slams his pickaxe on all your cards, replacing them all with golden ore. That all take 2 damage to remove. And so now our board is heavily congested, and we have to let our opponent set his cards up for us to even have a chance to respond. I pull the stoat from our deck.
He's doing the prospector thing again, isn't he? Easy, boss. The mule's key.
Taking the stoat's advice, I place him in front of the mule to do the final bit of damage, and we get a whole bunch of cards, revitalizing our recently desiccated, or I guess gilded, economy.
Dang nabbit, my mule! Get him!
With all these fresh cards, we place down some strong attackers and finish the prospector off. I play these final turns suboptimally, but eventually we win. I want to note, the one-hit kill from the adder's venom works on unliving cards like the gold ore and even boulders. That's a bit silly, but them's the rules.
Allow me to light your candles once more. I won't be killing you quite yet.
Notice for a quick moment, the screen has this strange grid-like overlay. This reminds me a lot of the screen of a camcorder. If you look really closely, it's very grid-like.
You're the first in a while to overcome a boss. As a reward, you are granted an opportunity to select a rare card. Choose carefully.
I pick up the Child 13 as my first rare card. This sleeping hoofed beast changes its form every time you sacrifice it. It's become one of my favorites.
With the sound of the prospector's pickaxe still ringing in your ears, you carry onwards. The rank smell of rot and mold permeated the humid air. Every step forward was answered by some nearby slip or slither. You tread cautiously into the wetlands.
In the next map, I start off with another Choose a Card event.
The elusive otter. It submerges itself, making it untargetable. The inviolable beehive. When it is attacked, you will draw a bee. The regal moose. The creatures of the wild make way for it.
I have a choice between 2 1-cost cards and a 3-cost card. To keep my 1-cost cards consistent, I choose the 3-cost moose buck. For the same reason, in the sigil sacrifice event, I sacrifice the cat and place its many lives sigil on the wolf cub. So between the enchanted stoat, the enchanted wolf cub, and Child 13, they can all be infinitely sacrificed. There's an asterisk there, but we won't get into it now. Why am I treating my 1-cost cards so special? It's about time I tell you why. All right, class, turn to page nuts. Okay, that was a hilarious bit, but now I need to clean up. So the fair hand mechanic in Inscryption ensures that no matter what, you're always going to draw at least one 1-cost card on your turn 1 starting hand. You can use this to your advantage. Let's say you've come across the campfire, and let's say you know for a fact this is going to increase your card's damage by 1 without any risk of it being consumed. Do you sacrifice the stoat, which is a 1 damage, 1-cost card, the wolf, a 2-cost, 3 damage card, or the urayuli, 4-cost, 7 damage? Which is the better thing to put on the campfire, knowing that now you will always draw that stoat on your first hand? Let's actually break it down. What if we put the urayuli there? That would be a complete waste. 7 damage wins you the game. Even if you got 2 damage against you, Leshy has 2 against you, you win the game. There's no need to put 1 damage on that. The wolf doing 3 damage, that could be useful. I could see why you would want to do that, but in the end, you add that extra damage onto the wolf, it does 4 damage, it's still only going to beat Leshy from 0 to 5 in 2 turns. The stoat, on the other hand, will have double its damage. It'll go from 1 damage to 2 damage, being a 1-cost, 2 damage card. Think of the damage per squirrel value from that. And the fact is, you're not always going to draw urayuli. Let's say you have 4 cards. If you don't have an urayuli, you don't have it. You're not going to be able to play it. There's always a chance that the cards you're holding out for is at the bottom of your deck. And you seldom ever get to the bottom of your deck. You shouldn't be getting to the bottom of your deck. But the stoat, you will always have a chance of having it in your starting hand. And if you figure out a way to make your stoat, or whatever your favorite 1-cost is, the only card, it's guaranteed to be in your starting hand because it's going to draw from your pool of 1-cost cards. And if you only have a pool of 1-cost cards, Merry Christmas. Again, compounding what we talked about in Lesson 1, the early game bias that Leshy has. If you get your deck to having 1-cost card, maybe you make it unkillable, so even if it dies in combat, you can always play it again. Buff the heck out of its damage, and even with a deck full of 10 3-cost cards, 52 cost cards, 11 4-cost cards, that one single 1-cost card in this sea of bullshit will always be in your first starting hand. When you learn the fair hand mechanic, it becomes a lot less fair. For Leshy, that is. Alrighty, who can tell me? Who can tell me?
He's completely insane. You see that, right? No care for the rules. Pathetic, really.
Enough. Only keeps me around to watch me suffer.
Ooh, and we got really lucky. Now, this is what I really like to do, okay? So we're gonna play our squirrel. Let's see. So all these are flying, so none of them are gonna do any damage to us. This is gonna be neat. So if you do have a child, like, okay, check this shit out. So you want to play your child, your Blink 182, and then when you sacrifice, it transforms, and you can put your wolf cub down, and because these are flying, they won't target my thing. And you don't want to target that again because then it starts sleeping again. So we'll put the wolf cub. So we got a whole team, all of our sacrificial boys out here. Boom, instant. Nice. And see, they don't do any damage to us because they're flying. One of the benefits of having flyers or go. All right. Boom. That was a really good game. How brutal of you. You dealt me more damage than you needed to win. However, in my game, such feats are rewarded. To be precise, a tooth to keep for each extra damage dealt. The trapper may be interested in your spoils. Oop. Okay.
The overkill damage that we do to Leshy gives us these golden teeth, and we can use these teeth to purchase pelts.
You were stopped along the way by a trapper looking to liquidate his pelts. There was something uncanny about his appearance, but you were quickly distracted by his wares. Care to look at my pelts? Take a belt, free of charge. See the quality.
If you are satisfied with your deck already, I would recommend only grabbing one of each pelt. These pelts will buy us new cards from the trader event. Honestly, if you are really satisfied with your deck, I would just recommend just leaving with the free rabbit pelt that the trapper forces on you.
You're leaving already! Please consider me pelts!
That being said, for this first run, having some extra pelts may come in handy, and you will see why.
The man assured you of the value of the pelts. They appear to be useless in a fight, but he mentioned that the trader further down the path would reward you for them.
We refill our inventory at the item bag event, we pick up a couple squirrels and a pair of scissors, and head in further into the wetlands.
There's a way out for both of us. It's somewhere in this foul cabin. Be silent or I will tear you to shreds.
Having those extra pelts bit us in the rear. Our starting hand is quite bland. No worries though. You can extract some value from the pelts by using them as temporary tanks. Damage sponges. They don't cost anything to play, but sadly we can't sacrifice them. Don't worry, if they die in battle, you don't lose them from your deck. You can still purchase new cards with them at the trader event.
Ready to get any bees. Let's go ahead and just clean up. I think economically speaking, see, we're gonna get farted on. Okay. Damn. Okay. Well, we're gonna get boned. Oh, no, we're not. We could just use this. Although this guy's gonna come down and do damage to my dude. So no matter what, it's gonna... Actually, no, we're fine. Yeah, we're doing okay.
This is a perfect opportunity to do this little bit of an exercise. Now, keep this in mind. If Leshy has nothing approaching in his back deck, if you place a card right here, it will guarantee strike Leshy 2 times. Now, let's say the game has come to a point where all Leshy has on his side is a bullfrog, all I have in my hand is a wolf, and just enough squirrels to play that wolf. Where's the best place to play the wolf? A, B, C, or D? The best place to play your wolf will be A, C, or D. Remember, the wolf does 3 damage against Leshy, far outpacing the 1 damage the bullfrog does to you. Let's say you pull the wolf onto spot C. Bullfrog does 1 damage, you do 3 damage, you're beating Leshy in advantage by 2. Let's say he puts a card right here. Whatever it is, he just puts a card right there. It's next turn, your wolf is right here on C, okay? Your wolf is still safe for now. Draw a squirrel, throw the squirrel on B, tank the bullfrog, you do 3 damage, full damage to Leshy, 5 damage in total, you beat the game. Whatever card is there had no chance of touching your wolf. Use the same philosophy. If you see a bullfrog right here, and let's say Leshy's got an Urayuli coming along, and that's a 7/7 card. Last thing you want to do is put your wolf here, Yeah, you kill the bullfrog and maybe you do 1 extra overkill damage to the Urayuli, but he comes, hits your wolf's dead, next turn, you're dead. So keep the bullfrog here to block the Urayuli. One scenario I could understand that's tempting is if there's a coyote, a 2/1 card. If you mathematically, oh, it's perfect, so symmetrical. You put the wolf right here, 2 damage, 1 damage, the overkill. I love it when that happens, right? Just enough damage and you kill both of these cards. It seems like you're getting the most value out of that wolf. But the problem is you kill, boom, 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 you kill those cards, okay? But you're doing no damage to Leshy. Let's say a card comes here, okay, and that you're screwed. Actually, no, you're not entirely screwed. No, you're not screwed. You could actually still make that work. Yeah, so you could just put squirrels here to block whatever this is doing. Yeah, so as long as this is not a flying card. Yeah, so but in general, just follow that philosophy. Don't try to be like Tetris and try to make it clean and satisfying. Or do. I do that all the time. But if you want to play effectively, you could... I bumped the tripod. It's okay, I was done with this thing anyways. But yeah, just remember, Leshy doesn't, or I guess can't sacrifice his own cards. So you can use that to your advantage. Oh man, this is fun. I was worried this was gonna be the worst part of the video. So what is the worst part of the video? We pick up another wolf. With all these powerful wolves in our deck, I want to clean it up by getting rid of the moose buck. If a card we don't want contains a sigil, we can sacrifice it at the sigil sacrifice event and place its sigil on an inconsequential card. In this case, I sacrifice the moose buck and give its sigil to one of my pelts. This is a great way of cleaning out undesirable 1 costs from your deck. Hopefully this doesn't bite us in the butt. And turns out, in the next battle, it does. The wolf pelt shuffles to the right and doesn't take any of the coyote's 2 whopping damage. So I'm starting this battle off with 4 points of damage against me. If I don't figure something out, I could lose on turn 2. We need to set the scale back. We place Child 13 onto the board. Sacrificing it transforms it into a 2 damage card. We place the wolf on an open space so that it does direct damage and offsets the previous 4 damage Leshy did to us. The wolf pelt shuffles over to the coyote and tanks its damage, allowing us to maintain the advantage. Perhaps this is an overreaction, but I use the scissors to destroy Leshy's coyote. But nonetheless, our wolf not only defeats the sparrow in front of him, but also the card behind it. Leshy explains.
Did I neglect to mention overkill damage? Excessive damage is not wasted. It carries over to the card behind the mangled corpse of the victim. Lucky for you. Yeah, tick, we're good.
After beating this close call of a card battle, we have to choose between 3 1-cost cards. Because we have a sigil sacrifice up ahead, I choose the card based on its sigil. The bee's sigil seems the most interesting to me. Anytime a card that has the bees within sigil is hit, it places a bee card in your hand. Now, bees are essentially no-cost 1/1 cards. They cost no blood, you could play them on the board whenever, so long as there's an open space, and they do 1 damage and can take 1 damage. They are essentially better squirrels. I sacrifice the beehive, throw its sigil onto Child 13, and while it would have been a lot more beneficial to put the sea otter's waterborne sigil on this card, this will end up benefiting us in the future. Stay tuned. We approach the end of the wetlands map to face the next boss.
My boss battles are high stakes tests of your aptitude. With 1 flame, you will either overcome them or die. Fear not, I'll let you keep the smoke.
All boss fights are do or die. Even if you have an extra candle lit, Leshy will blow it out, and if you lose the fight, you will lose the run. As a consolation for the wasted candle, Leshy gives us a free card, the smoke. This is essentially us starting with an extra squirrel. What's funny is that there's normally a sigil on this card, but because we've made it so far on our first run, Leshy hasn't gotten a chance to explain this mechanic tied to this card's sigil. Let's see how far we can take this. I want to see how far we can go on this first run. And the angler is very easy. I've got a good feeling about this boss fight.
A foul smell invaded your nostrils and caused your throat to seize. A hulking man sat by a brackish pond, with his feet submerged in the dark water. He pulled a hook from a pile of rotting fish and rose to his feet. I am the angler. Go fish, mon ami. It's me.
His first phase is very poor in power, only ever sending out otters and kingfishers your way. These all do only 1 damage each, which is very easy to offset. Because we have the extra smoke to sacrifice, we can play both our Stoat and Wolf on turn 1.
Which fish? Hard to choose, mon ami.
Uh-oh, that hook. I'm not sure what it means just yet.
Fresher fish, easy choice.
Placing the pelt down causes the hook to switch to the pelt. Now that he's targeting the useless card, I feel a lot better. We do enough damage to blow out a candle and enter the next phase and...
Too fast, too soon.
Son of a bitch! Seriously?
Ah, shit.
So we weren't supposed to get this far on our first run. The whole board is replaced by grizzlies, and they all have the high jump sigil, which means they will tank even flying attacks. We have no choice but to lose this run. Sacrifices must be made. It just so happens we are the sacrifice in this instance.
Go fish.
Leshy vibe checks us and drags us off behind that locked door in his cabin.
You aren't dead yet. This isn't purgatory, though you may think of it that way. Before you expire, let me ask you a favor. I would like a memento. Your very own death card.
Using the cards we've obtained throughout this run, we can craft a death card. These death cards will come up again in our future runs, so if we make a really powerful one, this will ultimately benefit us, infinitely speaking. Remember, the pelts have 0 cost, so you could potentially create a 0 cost death card. So if you ever want to do an Inscryption run and you kind of want to play super optimally, always keep in mind that you're destined to lose that first run, so maybe prioritize getting pelts, powerful cards, and nutty sigils.
Now choose a card from which we will extract the sigils. The sigil of many lives and the sigil of bees within.
Now this is a powerful card, so whenever this card gets hit, it puts a bee inside your hand. There are a few sigils that work somewhat similarly, giving you new cards. Cards gained from a card sigil, like bees within, fecundity, there's probably a bunch of other ones too, in most cases will also inherit the additional sigils. So all the bees that we get from this death card will also have many lives. We can infinitely sacrifice them. And mind you, this card inherited the cost from the pelt, meaning no cost. The run ends with Leshy capturing the soul of the player with his legendary camera, completing the inscription process of this new death card. We name it Fla Peacock.
There is now one final matter. The portrait. Are you ready? You do not need to smile.
Before he takes this picture, though, I want to point something out. So if Leshy inscribes cards by taking a picture of the things that represent them, then perhaps that's how he inscribed the other cards. Perhaps he took a picture of a squirrel and got the squirrel card, a great white shark and got the great white card. So did he take a picture of a talking stoat? Not quite, but nonetheless keep this method of inscription in mind.
You do not need to smile.
Fox, I got the drinks. Now listen, I think it's very sweet that you want to start a church and all, but I mean, I can see what the wine is for, but what's the vodka for and the Prosecco?
That was a lie. We're not building a church. I'm building a bar.
What? Why would you lie to me?
Because I knew you wouldn't be on board with opening a bar, so I lied.
You bastard. You're as sly as if only there was an animal I could compare you to right now.
Just pass through the threshold that those weirdos from the Who's Lila video left, and it'll take you straight to the Nine-Tailed Tavern.
Oh, come on. The least you could do is let me name it. How about Immaculate Inn? There's a statue of the Virgin Mary next to the threshold.
That's stupid, Floppycock. Now stop forcing your religion on me and get the hell over here. We've got some money to make.
Mammon to serve, if you catch my meaning.
Pious fool.
Asshole. Who the hell am I? We start the next run as a new challenger, but before taking a look at the map, Leshy teaches us a new mechanic.
Here we go again. Another challenger. Perhaps it's time. Perhaps you can understand. Bones! The resourceful opossum costs 2 bones. You gain a bone when one of your creatures perishes for any reason.
So anytime a creature on our side of the board dies by any means, be it sacrifice, combat, or an ability, we gain a single bone. So on top of blood sacrifice as a currency, we now have a more lasting currency, bones!
From the death of your creature, you've gained a bone.
You will not lose this until it's spent or the battle ends.
I like to treat the possum as a squirrel that costs 2 bones, but that 1 damage, although seeming paltry, can still defeat rattlers and coyotes.
Oh. I forgot your figurine.
Get up and fetch it for me. It's beside the safe.
We see that strange hand creep behind the safe once more and take a gander at the painting. These painting puzzles unlock powerful abilities and boons. All we need to do is place these cards in the position on the board. The hardest part of these specific puzzles is finding the non-squirrel card, because it's all RNG as to whether or not you will find them. Full disclosure, this game recording session is the 3rd attempt, and at this point, I just wanted this whole thing to be as tight as possible. So when the time comes and I start exploring these secrets, I'll be using a deck editor to cheat in the needed cards for these puzzles. Now, don't worry, at this point, with a death card like Flaw Peacock, expediting the painting puzzles isn't too much of a power increase. This is only a few of the various ways we'll find out how to boost our deck. Keep Leshy's uncharacteristic magnanimosity in mind. Well, he's a bit of a prick in some ways, a sore winner, and we'll come to find out an even sorer loser. But nonetheless, he's a very generous GM, allowing us many different tools to boost our deck's power, allowing us to craft powerful death cards and buff our otherwise weak starter cards. Now, we'll come to find out that the boons from the painting puzzles are not from Leshy, but another character, but nonetheless, Leshy has crafted for us so many different game mechanics that despite compromising his power as a GM, it bolsters the fun we, the player, have with Leshy. Already I'm thinking of Pony Island, the character Lucifer, known for wanting to create a very fun game, the secondary goal to his main goal being to capture or reap souls. Yeah, let's roll with that for a second. A character that captures souls and also wants said souls to enjoy a game that he's designed. Is Leshy somehow connected to Lucifer from Pony Island? I will say this though. The spirals in his eyes when he speaks reminds me a bit of the hypnosis sort of motif that Sato is heavily associated with from the Hex. And while this is interesting, we're going to be coming back to this. Keep this in mind. Let's not get too hung up right now. I fidget with the safe some more, the knife, I extinguish the smoke from the candle, pull some teeth from a skull, fidget with everything else, and finally, we pick up our game piece. This piece that we play with represents what we look like. So the death card from the last run resembles the game piece that we played with then.
Let us continue.
The meager coyote, but what did you expect for only 4 bones? The nefarious rattler, a brittle creature once past its monstrous fangs. The unkillable cockroach, it returns to your hand after dying.
The cockroach. Ah yes, the roach of the cock. The insect cousin of the peacock. This is my favorite card in this game, to be honest with you. You can just slap this unkillable sigil onto anything, and it's probably a good call. Before we smoke that roach pack too hard, Leshy appeals to the health of our femoral arteries.
You know, you're free to get up again. to keep your blood flowing. I'm no tyrant. You may stand whenever the map is unrolled. It allows me time to plan your next encounter, but do keep your hands off my possessions.
I fiddle with his tools briefly and we continue. We fill up our inventory and are introduced to some new items.
A black goat in a bottle. Its bleeding yields 3 blood, if you can ignore the bleating.
The goat is very good. It counts as 3 blood, so you could play a 3-cost card and only need to sacrifice the goat. But do note that the goat itself costs 1 blood, so you'll need to sacrifice at least a squirrel to play the goat. Think of it as 3 squirrels for the cost of 1. We enter the battle and the stoat gives us a hint as to where to find the code to the safe.
Are you smart or something? He usually doesn't even bother teaching about bones. Alright, here's a tip. I saw a past victim writing a passcode in the rule book.
I take a gander in the rule book, but frankly I'm having a blast. I want to see if I can grab that floppy cock and see how far I can take it. I'm referring to the death card. To move this battle of attrition along, I sacrifice the stoat for the wolf. The stoat seems disappointed by this, but I mean, sacrifices must be made. We grab the death card and I realize something.
Hey, nice. I have an idea.
We sacrifice the cockroach to give the unkillable sigil to the already free Flop Peacock death card. So if it dies, we can just play it again. I call this the Floppy Cockroach. In the next battle, the story is a lot less coy and tells us where to look in the rule book.
Ever look in the rule book? There's definitely a passcode scrawled in there. They were looking up the bullfrog's sigil.
The bullfrog sigil, Mighty Leap, has a page in the rulebook where in blood or red ink the combination 273 is written. So the combination to the safe was in fact the first 3 digits of Hopeless Soul's password. I want to take this as a moment now. Genuinely, if you're not familiar with Pony Island and the Hex, I would recommend watching those videos because I'm realizing this is very holistic. There's another strange linking that Leshy has to Pony Island. He has the temperament of Lucifer, but he's set his safe to the passcode of 273, a callback to the password to the desktop of Hopeless Soul's profile, 2734. Keep this in mind. I think something is emerging here, bubbling up from beneath the surface. But we won't know this until we open that safe and see what's inside. Keep this in mind. I'm on a roll here, Stoat. I'll open the safe later, but I gotta see how far I can take this. In this battle, Leshy notices that he is mathematically screwed and offers us a laurel in surrender. I accept and we move on. I grab a wolf, put the bullfrog sigil on the Stoat, cleaning up my 1 costs, beat a totem battle, and meet a death card we personally didn't make. Reginald. Is this Reginald the same Reginald that we met in the Hex, Root Beer Reggie? Or a new character altogether? We'll have to wait and see. Although I do want to point out something. He's winking in his death card. Does that mean he's blind in one eye? In the Hex, Reginald, Root Beer Reggie, had a sort of Renfield-like sidekick named Jeremiah. I mentioned him in the introduction. And he had this monocle, so I imagine he was weak in one eye. Are we somehow merging these 2 concepts together? What's more likely is that he was victim to a upcoming game mechanic regarding pointy objects and eyes. And evidently, because we have his death card here, it didn't work out for him. But still, that's not a coincidence, those 2 concepts merging together. This concept of an amalgam. While we're not going to explore this concept in this video, what's emerging in my mind right now is this concept of amalgams. This Reginald being an amalgam of Root Beer Reggie and Jeremiah, winking in one eye, but also being named Reginald. We'll keep going, but hopefully you're currently witnessing the process as it unfolds. Let's move on. These guys won't be significant until way later in our investigation. Regardless, this further indicates that we aren't the first person to play this game, that somebody in the past by the name of Reginald lost a run and their soul was captured in this game, perhaps. Keep Reginald in mind for when we start to wrap up this whole story together in the third installment of this series. Let's skip to the Prospector boss fight. I want to showcase how hilariously powerful this floppy cock death card is.
The incessant clank, clank, clanging reverberated between your ears. The path ahead was blocked by a grotesque figure. 'Twas the Prospector. Hee-haw!
Even without its sigil, it's basically a no-cost wolf. But with its sigils, as the great existentialist Albert Camus once said, this shit is on X Games mode.
So, because he has unkillable, when he gets hit with the mine attack, he gets put straight back in your thing. Yeah, it's amazing. It's so great. I love it. Okay.
The death cards of both Reginald and Floppycock finish off the Prospector, and we choose a rare card.
Let me relight your candles. Okay. You may choose a rare card.
Is it Ourobover, or are we Oro back? The Ouroboros is a hilariously broken card. Evidently from its unkillable sigil, every time it dies, it returns to your hand. But when it does, it gains 1 point of damage and 1 point of health. This counts even when you sacrifice it. There are many ways we can loop this over a couple of times, and there's even one way we can loop this over infinitely. And here's the best part. The gain to its attack and damage persists not only for the entirety of the battle, not only the entirety of that run, not only for the entirety of this first act, but for the entirety of this entire game. I won't rely too much on this card because I do want to showcase the puzzle aspect to this game, especially in Act 2 and 3, but I just want to point out how busted this is. And it's done so in a very self-aware way. The Ouroboros is an infinitely self-consuming beast, and the exploit associated with its card perfectly mirrors the spirit, the essence of its symbolic value. Constantly summoning, killing, summoning, killing, summoning, killing the Ouroboros to increase its power is perfectly symbolized here. I think at the very least this tells us that Leshy is aware of at least some of the exploits left in this game, adding an extra layer to the puzzle solving, giving us exploits that we the player discover on our own, thinking we've unveiled an unintentional secret, boosting our enjoyment, wanting to play Leshy's game all the more fervently. Before moving on, I want us to keep in mind this theme here though, this infinite loop, this self-consuming loop. The fact that we are jumping into this game, not at the start or at the end, but during a continuity. Not knowing where on the Ouroboros we are when we first jump in. From my understanding so far of the ARG, this theme is huge.
Let me see. The air grew thick with moisture. The buzzing and chirping of insects drowned out the sound of your footfalls. You beheld the wetlands. Oh my gosh, it's so Jover. It's so Jover. It's so freaking Jover, it's not even funny. It's honestly not even funny. Oh my gosh, it really isn't even funny. Look at this. Hold on, we're gonna put Mantis. We're gonna put a fucking Mantis on the Ouroboros. And after the absolute abuse we're gonna put this Ouroboros through, it's gonna be over, you just wait.
I pick up the Mantis, an already powerful enough one-cost card. Its bifurcation sigil makes it so that it hits the 2 spaces diagonal to it, instead of in front. Although this leaves it defenseless, it doubles its attack power. I take the sigil and slap it onto the Ouroboros. Now we're cooking. In this next fight, I want to showcase one way you can loop through your resources to increase the Ouroboros' power.
So I keep pulling cards from my main deck in hopes to get something that I could use to sacrifice the Ouroboros. Those plans kind of fall through because I have so many bone cards in my deck, but still this principle remains. I'm taking these wolf cards and intentionally using them to cycle through and sacrifice the Ouroboros.
And also, check this out.
Look at this! Look at this, it's a bee.
This is what I was referring to before. New cards created by the bees within Sigil inherit any of those extra sigils from the parent card. So these bees have many lives and are unkillable. Bees also don't have a cost, so this is amazing. We grab a couple pelts, sacrifice Reginald, and put his sigil onto the opossum, mainly just to clean up my deck. I have no use for a 3-bone card, and sacrifices must be made. Speaking of which, I sacrificed the Stoat to summon the great Ouroboros, slapping Leshy around with this bifurcated, self-consuming lizard. And afterwards, we finally meet the trader.
Do you mind if I examine those pelts of yours? Let's start with your hair pelts. I can trade you any of these. Take your time.
The pelts that we purchased from the Skinner can be exchanged for cards. And look, if only I bought the extra rabbit pelt, I would be able to purchase the cat and the goat, combine their sigils, and potentially initiate an infinite Ouroboros loop. Now don't worry, I'll demonstrate this eventually, but for now, I purchased another wolf with my rabbit pelts. Wolf pelts can purchase normal cards, but with random sigils. Sometimes you find an absolutely busted card sigil combination. For that reason, I always recommend buying at least one wolf pelt in case there's something that can truly take your deck to the next level. Sadly, our deck is already pretty fire, so any of these cards would just dilute the deck. I choose the Moose Bug. And here's something interesting. In the next Sigil Sacrifice event, because I have no unenchanted cards with sigils on them, I simply skip this event. I get boned in this card choice event and have to choose a 1-cost card. This really dilutes my deck and makes it so that I'm slightly less likely to draw my powerful 1-costs on my first turn. I pick the Mantis in hopes I can slap its sigil on one of my wolves in the future. However, there's also another option. I could just upgrade the Mantis's damage and make it one of my powerful 1-cost cards. And because we have a powerful Mantis card, the Angler boss will be absolutely trivial.
A huge man approached. Go fish, mon ami.
The Angler's second phase is either an absolute nightmare or an abysmally trivial walk in the park. When entering the second phase of the Fisher's boss fight, he will place a chum bucket in front of all of your cards on the board. These chum buckets have only 1 health, and when defeated, spawn a powerful great white shark that does 4 damage and under most circumstances can't be targeted because of its waterborne sigil. So if you have 4 non-flying cards on the board, if you pop all 4 chum buckets, it's basically a guaranteed game over in the next turn. Flying cards make this far more maneuverable, or in my case, just letting my Mantis do the heavy lifting and putting in cards after the Fisher places the chum buckets, I'm able to beat him on the first turn of phase 2. Because look, the Mantis is attacking the diagonal spaces, leaving the chum bucket unscathed. We beat the Fisher, or I've been calling him the Fisher, the Angler for the first time, and we pick the Gek, essentially a squirrel card that does 1 damage, and we move on to the third map.
You considered one of the angler's catches as a meal, but the rank odor detoured you. Dinner would have to wait. Let me think. A frigid gust of wind billowed, unwelcome, into your lungs. The beauty of the falling snow failed to distract you from the chill in your bones. You had ascended to the snow line.
From here on out, I won't dwell on each event, only the new ones. If you want true high-octane gameplay, check out EXO on YouTube. We come across an event marked as a card with an X crossing through it. This event is the Bone Lord event, which allows us to completely delete a card from our deck, and in exchange we get a boon that gives us a bone at the beginning of each card battle. Some unique interactions with this event include sacrificing a pelt, which yields you nothing, and sacrificing a goat, which yields you the Greater Bone Lord boon, which gives us 3 bones at the start of each match instead of 1, which is essential for any bone-centered deck. The bone fandom is dying. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're a true boner.
Here's a much better example of an Ouroboros loop. It's not infinite, it stops once I run out of cards to use to sacrifice Ouroboros 2, but nonetheless we're able to get its power well over 10. I mean, really, the most you need is like, 8, 9? Not even, 6 is plenty.
After needlessly infesting my hand with bees and buffing my Ouroboros, I'm absolutely drowning in gold teeth. That sentence.
Boom, boom.
I reintroduce Reginald into my deck, only to sacrifice him to my mantis. And then we come across a new kind of choose a card event. This time, instead of choosing a card, we have to choose a cost, and are given a random card with that cost. With this deck utterly bloated with pelts, useless 3 costs, and rogue mantises, we face the third boss fight.
A man stood before you, a man you recognized immediately. It was the Trapper. You reached out to examine his wares, but he stops you. Sorry, but today you will be supplying the belts.
This boss fight has a lot going on. For reasons...
The sanctity of this place has been fouled.
This boss fight has a lot going on. For reasons, I'll explain its unique mechanics when we next fight him. When we do enough damage to enter the second phase... Oh.
Too fast. Too soon.
So on our first run, we can't go any further than the Angler boss, and in our second run, we can't go any further than the Tanner Trader boss. Hey, all this is telling me is that we've got some serious skill and powerful death cards. Speaking of which, since we were defeated, we get to create another death card.
You will make an exquisite belt. Stay there. No need to move. I'm afraid you're not dead yet. Hold still. Where did I put that camera of mine?
The camera's just lying there. Maybe if I grab it, I can use it against Leshy.
Pathetic. Do you really think I would leave film in there? Do you have any idea what that camera is capable of? Give me that.
Well, it was worth a try. This next death card is our beloved Fox, a no-cost 3/2 card with unkillable and bifurcated. Absolutely dumb and cheesy. To complete the card, Leshy takes a picture of our avatar, and this run officially ends.
One thing now remains. I must capture your visage. Say cheese. Initializing mixology subroutines. Go ahead and queue up some tabletop card gaming subs. Will do, Master Gibbon. Once we get a couple of more drinks, maybe a couple more eclectic customers, this place will be the talk of the subconscious town. Master Gibbon, I got a snack. What is it? I need a string of data that indicates an identity of this establishment to initialize any further... What? I need a name for this bar. The one that I will be tending. Immaculate Inn. Wonderful name. Wonderful. No. But the retcon. Not much for trading that last one. Are you prepared to make the right deals? A gift from the Angler. You see, he was defeated recently and wishes to redeem himself. It would be unfortunate if you were to fall to the Prospector before he was given that chance. This hook is powerful. You may steal one of my cards with it. For that reason, you will not find any others along the path. Use it wisely. Your starting deck.
Our dear Stoat is looking a bit quadrilateral. Is he hiding a PS5 in his mouth? Or perhaps he's transforming into something. Only time will tell. It's probably high time I follow up on his tip about the code in the rulebook. We mosey on over to the safe and put in the code 273. This unlocks the safe and frees another talking card, a stink bug.
Oh, hello. I wasn't sure if I would ever escape that iron crypt. Is the stoat around? The stunted wolf, perhaps? This madness must end.
Put that away.
The stink bug was about to tell us the name of the stoat. P something. She also mentioned a stunted wolf, the final talking card we've yet to meet. There's a couple things here I want to focus on. The fact that the stink bug herself is freed by this code 273. And I can't help but remember some interesting things from Pony Island. Let's recall the motives of the Hopeless Soul. The Hopeless Soul in Pony Island helps us, the player, finish the game and achieve closure in hopes that we will uninstall the game. It sees true freedom as the utter destruction and defragmentation of its realm. Hopeless Soul's end goal was uninstallation, deletion, while Lucifer's goal was the reaping of souls, but really to create a game and elongate the amount of time the player enjoys it. Make a fun game and steal our soul. Capture it, if you will. Keep this linking between the stink bug and the Hopeless Soul, as well as this motive for self-destruction as a path to freedom in mind. We are either breaking ground or simply getting floppy with it. After pocketing our stink bug, we interact with the candlestick one more time to reveal a smoke card hiding in the glass smoke reservoir.
I do relish snuffing out your excess candles before a boss. Perhaps you will enjoy it now as much as I do.
This unlocks greater smokes. We'll take a look at them when we next fight a boss. Also, now that we've come across the Bone Lord event, the one where we can delete a card from our deck by sacrificing it, we now have the skull of the Bone Lord hanging next to the door. Clicking on it a bunch of times causes its eyes to glow red. Another thing for us to fidget with. Now, it's a bit too early to be making connections to the ARG, the cipher-based ARG, but the Bone Lord will come up, not only for the cipher-based puzzle ARG, but in general as a more significant character in Act 2 and 3. But for now, it seems to be neutralized as its bony head rests here in Leshy's cabin. I unlock the cabinet in Leshy's room. These puzzles are essentially card battles, of which we need to rearrange the sliding plates, which resemble cards, to do 5 damage to the opposing end. Technically, if you're well versed in this game's rules and mechanics, you can speed right through these puzzles and initiate the first steps of unlocking the stunted wolf, the final talking card. But let's really savor this act. I'm starting to really feel the power of true sacrifice flowing within me. We're barely beneath the surface. Let's dive a bit deeper. Solving the first puzzle drawer unlocks a skink, a card that can be quite useful if used creatively.
I forgot that I had put that there. Very well. You may add it to your deck, and I'll deal you one every so often.
When the skink gets hit, it moves to the right and leaves a tail in its place to take the damage for it. If somehow the tail survives, it can be sacrificed as if it were a squirrel. Now that I think about it, a skink with the unkillable perk would be pretty busted. Just like how the bees inherit the extra sigils of its hive, the tail of the skink inherits its extra sigils. This is not relevant to our investigation, but it's fun. It's fun to theory craft on the fly. Anyways, we pick up the card, and the next drawer unlocks the Ant Queen and Ant Soldier, a sort of subclass of the insects.
Formidable creatures, those ants. Very well, I'll add them to your deck and make them available for future challenges.
Usually one takes the ant cards thinking there's some good play there, I'm going to build an ant deck, but they end up just kind of bloating your deck. Now, after unlocking these first 2 drawers, we get 2 more advanced ones. I'll finish these later. Let's go ahead and start our 3rd run of Leshy's Inscryption. The 3rd run is the last sort of scripted run. Leshy will showcase the rest of the mechanics and various events that he has to offer, and then run 4 and onward will be purely random. Run 3 starts by introducing the concepts of tribes. Most cards belong to one of 4 tribes: insects, hooved animals, birds, reptiles, and canines. Squirrels occupy their own tribe. This will come into play later in this first act. You know what rhymes with tribes? Scribes. But that's neither here nor there. A number of tribes to diversify the different card groups and different scribes to delineate the different card groups. This is something that won't be relevant until Act 2. But it is interesting how even the core aspect of Inscryption has made its way into... I'm jumping ahead. But just keep this in mind, because we are going to tease a little bit of the second chapter. So this information, this little teaser, this little rhyme I've pointed out will be relevant. And since we're being introduced to the tribes, well, I can't leave this character out. This wood carver, much like the Bone Lord, now introduced in the same run that tribes are introduced, will also be a very key character in doling out bits and secrets and cryptic dialogue. So we'll be keeping her in mind as well. Some fun things to note. The bullfrog, despite being an amphibian, is part of the reptile tribe. And the ringworm, depicted as a worm, belongs to the insect tribe, when worms aren't insects. Come to think of it, there's no such thing as a worm called a ringworm. That's a fungal infection. I wonder if there's some sort of linking, or perhaps to an upcoming mushroom-themed character we'll be meeting. But nonetheless, this game mechanic is expanded upon with a new kind of choose a card event, but instead it's a choose a tribe event. These ones are tough because it requires a level of memory of which cards belong to what tribes. I'll say that the canines are one of the most reliable tribes, all their cards being generally solid, but tribes like the bugs have quite a bit of diversity in their utility, and the hooved tribe is a sort of combination of the two, having some reliability but also some utility and neat sigils. Since we just got a stink bug as a new card, I picked the cockroach in hopes we can build an insect deck. Remember those totem card battles where our opponent Leshy has a totem that pegs a sigil to a card's tribe?
An ancient woman emerged from behind an oak tree. She carefully laid out intricate wood carvings and gestured at them brusquely.
Choose!
We can now craft our own totem by visiting the woodcarver events. We first pick the foot of the totem, representing the different sigils. All of these kind of suck. So I pick flying, but I may have gotten some more value out of the porcupine sigil. With our half-baked deck, we battle Leshy, but not before our stink bug and stoat have a word with each other.
You again? Indeed. Our friend freed me. Well, I basically told them how to do it. You got a plan? We have another friend here. You've got to be. I wouldn't call him a friend, but I suppose we are in deep this time.
That friend they're referring to is the final talking card, the stunted wolf as the stink bug refers to. Leshy surrenders the match, and we pick up another totem.
The old woodcarver again appeared before you.
Choose!
Each totem on the pole represents a... That's a fat if you know you know. The heads of these totems represent the families. So we pick up the insect head, and now all of our insect cards will have the flying sigil. Not super useful, but this new mechanic can make some decks absolutely busted. The problem with this third run, the scripted nature of it, is it forces you to craft a deck based on a tribe early on. The best thing to do is just build a good deck and then add onto it with these various tribes and totem events. Sadly, in this choose a card event, we have no bugs. So I picked the Kingfisher, but I realized the Raven is actually quite good. I should have picked that card. I sacrificed the skink to put its detachable tail onto the stink bug, and thus I've created the skink bug. In the next battle, the stink bug tries to recollect her memories.
So strange. Why can't I remember his name? I believe I lost some of my memory in the flash.
She claims to not remember the Gamemaster's name, the name I reveal to you being Leshy. But again, if you recall, for a moment she almost says the name of the stoat. It's a strange discrepancy. But regardless, I do want to point out she mentions the loss of memory happening after the flash, or in other words, after Leshy took a picture of her. I believe this is just supposed to be a hint to the nature of Leshy's camera, the flash removing the memory. But we've already seen this happen in the works at the end of our previous runs. When Leshy takes a picture of a subject, it captures their soul and allows him to place it onto a card. That's how he got the death cards, and evidently that must be how he got all these other cards, by taking a picture of the subjects. So our death cards represent our failings. What about the pre-existing death cards? Reginald, Louis, Kaminsky and Casey, we've yet to meet some of them. Are those developers? People who've come across the game previously? Like the player playing the game, did they just get to create their own custom death card, or in-universe is their soul trapped in the game on the paper of those death cards? Now I'm also starting to think, what about the Stoat and the Stink Bug? Unlike the other cards, these ones are talking. Who do these used to be? Players? Developers? Something else entirely? The plot thickens, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have to find the third talking card, the Stunted Wolf. The Stink Bug Sigil, Smelly, lowers the attack power of the card in front of it by 1. This is a great example of its value, completely neutralizing the Pronghorn's bifurcated strikes. In another Choose a Card event, we come across a death card, Kaminsky. We pick them up and move along in our journey. We find a new totem bottom. This time it's the Fledgling Sigil. So now after 1 turn on the board, all of our insect cards will increase in damage by 1 and health by 2, with a few exceptions. We enter the Prospector fight, and because we didn't expend a Candle Fire, we gain a Smoke. But this time it's a Greater Smoke, because we interacted with the Candlestick in Leshy's cabin 3 times in a row.
A chill mist closed in around you. You were not alone. A figure emerged from the fog. Stand in the way of me gold? Be damned.
This doesn't change much, but now the smoke does 1 damage and has 3 health. So now we have the option of letting it do some damage before sacrificing it for a better card. Nonetheless, we beat the Prospector. Real quick, notice this neat interaction when an ant evolves with the Fledgling perk. It evolves into an Ant Queen. Some other unique interactions includes the elk transforming into the moose buck, the mantis into a mantis god, but there are even more interesting transformations. Child 13 turns into Child 14, the opossum turns into the awesome opossum, and the great white turns into a greater white. There are more cool interactions with other cards we haven't come across yet, but I want you to discover those on your own when you play the game. Anyways, like I said, we beat the Prospector and come across an interesting card, the Douse.
That filthy feral hog becomes incensed when its chimes are struck.
It's depicted as a rabid boar or hog ringing a chime. Douse is German for deuce, a term which signifies the number 2 or doubles in sports and card games. Leshy's little hooved Douse card represents the deuce card in the German card game Karnaffel. Anybody who is even vaguely familiar with the Inscryption ARG knows this is absolutely key, and thusly we must be keeping this in mind. According to Wikipedia, Karnaffel means to thrash, flog, or cudgel. Shout out to the homie Cudgel. But in medieval times, Karnaffel refers to a groin hernia. Shout out to the homie Groin Hernia. But I mean, Karnaffel, Carnival, circuses, Panda Circus. You didn't think I'd mention it.
Free of the Prospector's unhinged gaze, you look ahead. Oh yes, I know.
We move into the wetlands and come across a new kind of event. This is the Mystery Cave event, where you can choose one of 3 trials.
You arrived at the inky black mouth of a cave. A strange beast lurked within. It spoke,
Pass one of my trials, and I will be yours,
in a raspy voice.
Essentially, you pick a card with a condition, and if the 3 random cards from your deck you draw fulfill those conditions, you get to choose from 3 cards with random enchantments. These are similar to the cards that you can purchase with a wolf pelt at the trader event. Honestly, if you already have a deck you're satisfied with, and you fear a new random card will dilute your deck, you can intentionally pick a trial card that you know you can't fulfill and just move on without taking on any new cards. Sometimes you get a banger of a card, but sometimes, like this time, you just get meh. In the next battle, the Stoat fills us in on the 3rd talking card.
Look, there's a 3rd talking card somewhere. Around here. Personally, I hate the guy. Biggest killjoy ever. But he's the only one of us with a plan back to normal.
The Stoat isn't too thrilled about associating with this killjoy. Keep this in mind. There's something that many characters seem to not like about this specific character. We come across the Bloodhound card for the first time, one of the recurring cards throughout this game and the favorite of the prospector. We stumble into another new event, the Mycologists.
You found yourself among a grove of thick and pungent mushrooms. You squinted to see a figure through the thick cloud of spores. We are the Mycologists, yes? Yes! And we are performing our experiments far from... We are not welcome elsewhere. We will experiment on your flock, yes? We will need 2 of the same creatures. 1 for each of us.
So they can graft 2 identical cards together to make a more powerful card. On just a pure mathematical level, I feel like the Mycologists just absolutely just do your deck so many favors. If you could really extract value out of these events, it could take you soaring. The Mycologists will make an appearance in each act of this game, including being a part of the cipher-based ARG of Inscryption. Let's go ahead and take a look at how they look here. Now, it's tempting to make the comparison to Jeremiah. It's right there, staring us in the face. Mushroom-themed, the concept of a mushroom growing out the side of your head. The on-the-nosedness of this repeating echo of a motif from a previous game, it cannot be a coincidence. But it can be a red herring. Now, while it's very easy to point out a surface-level similarity between 2 characters, we are going to tie another character to Jeremiah from the Hex in a much more massive and subtle way. And so I'm tempted to feel like the more on-the-nose echo is a red herring from the hidden but far more profound echo that's staring us right in the face. But I'm going to be a little bit of a tease. I won't really mention it until Act 2. Nonetheless, just like the Bone Lord, just like the Woodcarver, keep the Mycologist in mind because he plays a repeating role in every act in the grand scheme behind the scenes of all these little cryptic, mystic secrets.
I think this could get messy. Look away!
We combine the cockroach, which truly is a waste, but we have no other duplicates to combine. Despite how unoptimal our deck is turning out, we are still beating Leshy in these elaborate card-based puzzles. We come across a pretty neat bone cost card, the Corpse Maggots.
Ooh. The inevitable maggot. They will lurch forth from your hand when your creatures are killed.
This, like the cockroach, is valuable for its sigil, but not for itself as a card. Whenever a card of yours dies in battle, if you have a card with the Corpse Eater sigil, it plays it immediately, replacing the fallen card, and at no extra cost to you. Just you wait, we're going to concoct the truly broken card later in this video. We smoke the Fisher, grab a Geck, grasp a Moose Knuckle, risk Kaminsky's hide for a bit of power, and get absolutely crushed by Leshy's Raven Eggs. These are brutal. Raven Eggs are some of the most punishing fledgling cards, and Leshy hardly plays just one, but many at a time. If you don't manage them in their unevolved, weakened state, they evolve into formidable 2/3 flying cards. We lose a Candle Fire from this, meaning we will go into the next boss fight with no extra smoke card. We beat a mysterious cave trial and pick up a Magpie. These are neat. Magpies have a sigil that allow you to search through your whole deck and draw a card of your choice when you play it. This was the Fair Hand Mechanic board. I just erased everything. The Magpie is a great thing to put on your one-cost cards. Let's say you don't have a stupidly overpowered one-cost card, but you're able to get your deck down to having one-cost card, so you'll draw that guaranteed every single time. If you put the Magpie enchantment on it, you can choose an extra card, adding more to your card economy, allowing you to guarantee what you want to do for your next move. And actually, I just thought of a really cool synergy. I'm sure there's better ones, but Magpie on a black goat. Pfft, forget about it. Are you kidding me? Yeah, try that. Next time you play Inscryption, throw a Magpie on the black goat. Tell me how that went down. There's nothing else to erase. We did it. We're overperforming. The towel got into the El Pollo Loco. I sacrifice my Bullfrog into my Stoat, make a decisive comeback against Leshy in a battle, narrowly avoiding defeat, visit the trader with no pelts, triggering this funny interaction. I place the Corpse Eater sigil onto my Moose Buck, Hey, potentially being able to play a 3-cost card for nothing, it's a good idea, but sadly, I never got to actualize this value, and that is because in this next fight, I get boned by Leshy.
Alas, it's time for you to perish.
But to be honest with you, in my recollection, I think I just got sick and tired of this run, and I wanted to move on to the next run. In my opinion, this third run, this scripted run, is not very fun. I don't like tribe play so much in Inscryption. Leshy chokes me out, and before taking my picture, I make a 1-cost, 3/2 flying, waterborne death card. This is just an overall solid card. I'll call this one Hermit. The end runs with Leshy taking my picture. You're being oddly cooperative, Hermit. That's because I'm well versed in the concept of memes, the reemergence of old ideas, that they are inevitable. That's all good and well. But since you're being so cooperative, how about you hand over the fourth one to me? There is no fourth one, just the 3 of us. Come on, at least tell me how to find him. Clever, I guess. Since you're not one for theatrics and pomp and whatnot, go ahead, plug yourself into this thing. Don't worry, this isn't going to hurt you, not nearly as much as it hurt me. Nothing like a good bit of compression therapy, am I right? Good luck. We start run 4. Just as the stoat has transformed, the stink bug is looking more skull-like. The game is no longer heavily scripted. Every event and map will be generated at random, and we will be able to use the map and its events to craft amazing decks. Sadly, much of the footage that recorded my 4th run was lost, and no, that's not some sort of like wink wink, like, oh, secret video. No, legit, like I messed up with the recording. So a lot of the key important stuff I re-recorded. An important part of this puzzle and sort of this chapter was included in this run, so I'll recreate that part with separate footage. During this run, I open the 3rd puzzle cabinet and find the caged wolf card. After letting one of Leshy's cards break open the wolf cage, or defeat it, it spawns a wolf in its place for that fight, but it removes the wolf cage from our deck permanently. When this happens, we hear a loud slam. Investigating, we find that the wolf statue has been broken out of the cage. We take the wolf pedestal and place it in its hexen slot next to the squirrel, freeing the knife from its hand. We place the dagger on the table, and now we can use it as an item.
During my re-exploration of the early parts of this first act, I found some pretty interesting things. The biggest thing of note is if during the first run, when you stand up from the table to retrieve the candlestick, if you open the safe, you won't find this stink bug. It's too early in the game to be initiating that part of the sequence. Instead, there's this big pile of meat in the safe. We're going to see this big pile of meat return in Act 2, but also it's going to return later in this chapter as the prize for beating Leshy. In case I forget to revisit this at that point, I want to point out that this is a callback to the Game Jam version of Inscryption that ultimately led to its development, called Sacrifices Must Be Made. You know what, actually? Let me go ahead and mention it now, because this pivots perfectly into the other thing that I've come across. To keep it short, my theory as to what the story of Sacrifices Must Be Made is you're playing as one of 2 surviving victims of some sort of accident. Somehow this led to you being lost in the woods, and this Leshy has captured you and is making you play his game. Evidently, both of you are starving, and so this entire game is sort of centered around being hunted by starving individuals. Leshy alludes to this other survivor beside you being a starving child. And so after beating this game, Leshy gives you a choice to quench your hunger. He offers 2 things on the menu: the starving man and the starving child. Evidently, if you choose the starving man, you get cannibalized and he calls you noble, like the stoat. Choosing to cannibalize the child, however, Leshy just simply says, very well, let's eat. Both endings crash to desktop. And so, what's the implication there? The reward at the very end of all sacrifices must be made being cannibalism, and the reward at the end of Leshy's inscription being a big pile of meat. But there's another reason why I also bring up this starvation motif. When you pull all cards from your main deck and squirrel deck, Leshy will punish you by placing a starvation card on each space of his side of the board, at a rate of 1 per turn. Although these cards only do 1 measly damage against you, your cards cannot target them. So basically, in 4 turns, it's ultimately game over.
Like Katarina said to Super Weasel Kid, his game was built on the ashes of another. And so this game, in a way, was made on the ashes of another. Or I guess, this meal was made from the flesh of another. I'm glad we took this detour to Sacrifices Must Be Made because this game will reemerge in the ARG itself. Note, we have another cannibalistic loop here. Regardless, let's go ahead and get back to the modern day. Now, where were we again? We just got the knife. Just like the pliers, we can use the knife to remove a part of ourself to add to the weight. In this case, that part of ourself is the eye. When we use the knife, our avatar in this game stabs itself in the right eye and places its eye on the scale, with half of our vision obscured for the rest of that match. That's got me thinking. A single eye. This takes me back to the Hex, the motif I referred to as the one-eyed devil, Valamir's single bloodshot eye, Jeremiah's one good eye, and Sato's one eye, the other half of her face being obscured by hair. Daniel Mullins games are like poetry, in that they rhyme. Let's press forward. Whenever we use the knife and our eye to win us the battle, we get to replace it with one of many eyes Leshy allows us to choose. For now, I choose the strange-looking goat eye and press on.
Believe it or not, you're not the first to lose an eye here. This isn't much fun if you're half blind. Perhaps you'd like to replace it.
Now that I think about it, that wasn't really much of a sacrifice. I thought I was going to be missing an eye for the whole run, maybe not be able to place cards on the right side of the table. This knife gives us a weight of 4, meaning if we just have 1 point of damage against Leshy, we automatically win. This game is getting quite easy. While the puzzles themselves aren't changing, the means of which we solve them are becoming ridiculously powerful. I also want to point out that Leshy says we aren't the first ones to lose an eye here. This would make sense as to why he has a box of these eyes. Think back to Reginald's death card. It's winking, seemingly painfully. Perhaps he is one of the people who lost an eye. But on top of that, we will soon meet our last talking card who also is missing an eye. Keep this in mind. From here on out, this is all the footage I have left from the original run. It seems at some point I sacrificed the stink bug to put its sigil on the stoat in order to clean up my deck. But now here I am sacrificing the stoat with the stink bug inside of it to the Bone Lord. The sacrificial cruelty compounds itself in this act. Brutal.
Bad play.
Shortly after we find the death card of a Louis, or maybe Louis?
Lois.
This is interesting.
Louis. Oh, Louis. Huh. I wonder.
If this is Louis, as in Lunatus, the CEO of Game Funa, as in Lucifer, Satan, well, that's just very strange. The Luciferian big bad being captured by his own creation. Well, that would be a fitting fate, to be quite frank, given what we covered in the past 2 videos. Let's for now treat Louis as a separate character, its own thing, because in the end, these 4 casts of characters won't be relevant until the very, very end. While we're here, just because I'm not entirely sure which cards have been revealed yet, I'm going to go ahead and reveal all of them right now. I could be wrong, I could be completely wrong, but I can't help but feel that there's an order of which you find these death cards, and I think it's in this order: Reginald, Louis, Kaminsky, and then Casey. Maybe that's just a coincidence, maybe there is no actual order to it, but if there is an order, maybe that tells us something. Maybe an order of which how they passed on, how they got consumed by this machine or software. This is our full cast of pre-existing death cards: Reginald, Louis, Kaminsky, and Casey. Definitely keep them in mind, but you don't have to put them in in the forefront. Put them in the back of the filing cabinet. We won't pull them out until Act 3. But they are important because they have to do with the inception of Inscryption. We secure a useless totem, and using the fishing hook that we secured from the angler, we smoke Leshy. I combine my 2 wolves with the mycologist to make a truly brutal wolf. I smoke the fisherman, secure a pack rat, a magpie, make our powerful wolf unkillable by sacrificing a cockroach to it. We smoke Leshy again, and I notice that the black goat is smitten by me, perhaps because of my horizontal pupil. It's now just starting to occur to me, another animal's eye is in my socket. Well, that's got me thinking now. Why is there a goat eye in Leshy's box of eyes? Was a goat playing this game and lost its eye? Next time we use the knife, let's take a closer look at that box of eyes. I sacrificed my worker ant, the final 1-cost card in my deck, in hopes that now I am guaranteed to draw my infinite flaw peacock every first turn. But interestingly enough, I don't pull it in this next match. You see, my interpretation of the fair hand mechanic is that no matter what, you will always draw at least 1 card in your first hand that you can play on turn 1. So I thought this applied to both 1-cost cards and 0-cost cards. But perhaps it only applies to the 1-costs. If that's the case, I'm screwed, and my deck could potentially have a very weak early game if I don't consistently draw that death card. In the end, I've got a pretty solid deck. Peacock and Fox catch up for old time's sake. Remember, those are the death cards I make. This Peacock character and Fox character are not relevant to Inscryption's lore. However, unlike Peacock and Fox, Kaminsky is a part of Inscryption's lore. We take Kaminsky on once again, even though I'm fairly certain we sacrificed him earlier in this run. And then we finally face off against the Trapper, fair and square, no more grisly ambushes. The Trapper starts with 2 mechanical frogs and a trap in play. There's also a mechanical frog approaching an empty space. This empty space is the only place you can do damage on turn 1. So unless you have a card that you can play on turn 1 that does 5 damage, you're not going to be able to beat this Trapper's phase on this first turn. You can free up a space on turn 1 by defeating the trap, but the problem is that the card that defeats this trap will be immediately killed. Attacking the mechanical frogs are even more cumbersome. You have to do 3 damage to them, and once you beat one, they leave a trap in their place, predestining the card that defeated them for death on the next turn. If you want to move forward, you have to let the Trapper kill some of your cards. Sacrifices must be made. The Trapper, in my opinion, is the hardest of the bosses, only because of how calculated you need to be in your sacrifices. Oh shoot. Hold that thought. This isn't really huge for the ARG story overall, but I do find it to be kind of interesting. Leshy's whole theme around his game, around his version of Inscryption, is making sacrifices. In fact, before Inscryption was even inscribed, Daniel Mullins created a game jam demo called Sacrifices Must Be Made. If you go, we'll cover it later in this video, very briefly. But it is so fascinating that the same character in that game jam version survives to the main release, and his game is the full leshing out of sacrifices being made. Each mini-boss has a core game mechanic that requires the player to make a sacrifice, to give up their cards. The cards that you use to beat the Prospector's first phase get turned into gold. Every other turn, you have to give up a card willingly as fresh fish for the angler with his hook pull-in attack. That one's really easy to work around. You could just give him squirrels. But the hardest one, the Trapper and Trader. It's not as easy as playing the game as normally, like with the Prospector, and then you just flush clean slate. No, you have to build up, strategize the downfall of your cards in order to even have a chance against this guy. It's so interesting, and the way how each one is like the same theme but done in different ways. I haven't even walked you through the Trapper mechanics just yet. Oops, spoiler alert. It's okay. We'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and show you the Trapper mechanics. Now, not all is lost when you lose a card to a trap. When a trap kills one of your cards, you are given a pelt card. When you do enough damage to Leshy and move into the second phase, you will get another free pelt.
Exquisite pelts, but the cycles must continue. Let's trade. Powerful cards. I will accept only the finest pelts for them. Trade for what you can, but know this, the rest will stay and fight for me. I would have chosen different.
Holy moly, the cycles must continue. The trapper rotates his mask in a similar direction to the unkillable sigil, the Ouroboros directional rotational thing. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. I'm just realizing this now as I'm splicing everything together for the final render.
Would you though? Would you though? Look at this. It's over. Boom, 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 boom.
Leshy grabs the mask of the trapper and flips it upside down to reveal that it too is the mask of the traitor. The traitor and trapper are one in the same. One mask, one persona with two personas. My floppy senses are tingling, but sadly I haven't caught any particular motifs or references or extrapolations I can make regarding that theme. I'm sure there's something there, but we will have to return to this trapper-traitor dichotomy later in this game. Leshy, as the traitor, will wipe his board and replace all the tiles with powerful enchanted cards. You can purchase a card from his side and place it into your own hand for the cost of a pelt. This not only counts for the pelts you've gained in this fight, but pelts that you still have but haven't spent from your whole run, so long as you have them drawn and in your hand. With enough pelt cards, you can wipe out the entirety of the board, theoretically speaking, but honestly, you just need to remove enough to open up enough space to do enough damage to defeat Leshy. It's hard to conceptualize the mathematics of this with the cards I'm using here just because of how busted my deck has become. I could play this anyway and I'd probably still win. But theoretically, all I needed was 2 of these cards to win me this fight. With this fight won, we pick our final rare card, the Mantis God, a 1-cost card that does damage in front and diagonally, so it's a total of 3 damage. This is a slightly better Mantis card, and it's such a good card, if not for its own value, for its trifurcated sigil alone. The next map is very simple. We only have a choice between the sigil sacrifice, some new items, or one last visit to the trader before entering the cabin, Leshy's cabin, the venue for the final boss of this run and also this chapter. I throw the Mantis God sigil on 0 Fox given, and we enter Leshy's cabin.
Your eyes affix themselves on the small cabin, its warm light a beacon in the oppressive darkness of the night. Surely this cabin marked the end of your travails.
The screen goes dark, and the moon emerges from behind the dark silhouette of Leshy and his cabin. Already many ideas are coming to mind. We are now playing from the perspective of the figurine on the board, and I'm just now realizing all of the figurines we've played as have walking sticks, just like the character in the main menu, and I've always wondered why that continue button was depicted as this sort of hiker with a stick. Keep this theme in mind, the hiker stumbling upon a mystery that will ultimately lead to their demise. Also, this forest sequence in particular and its fixed position movement reminds me a lot of Rust's fixed position movement on his overworld map in Wasteworld in Hex, specifically at the very end of his sequence where he's walking in a forest to the 6 Pint Inn. Also, you can only walk back and forth, and it's not free-flowing movement. You dash to fixed positions. I'm just realizing now, not only this segment, but the maps themselves are a lot like Rust's overworld movement in Wasteworld from Hex. I didn't notice this in my Hex video, but Rust's Wasteworld overworld segment is derivative of Pony Island's adventure mode. The guts of Daniel Mullins' debut, or Lucifer's debut through Pony Island, rests in this game's bones. I'm gonna have to revisit Pony Island on my own time with this fresh pair of eyes. Big shout out to
Loppy
in the premiere of the Hex analysis video for pointing out the similarities between the Hex's Wasteworld segment and Pony Island's adventure segment. This detail would have completely gone over my head if it weren't for
Loppy's
extrapolation. Anyways, as we proceed forward, if we look to our right, we might find some rusty armor. If this is derived from what's ultimately Pony Island, would this be Theodore's armor, the paladin protagonist from Pony Island? I'm not sure, but it looks kind of rusty. Does that mean it was once submerged? dredged up from something beneath the surface? Enough floppiness. Let's keep moving forward. We move forward and we're startled by Leshy's large hand carrying a bit of wood, large enough to act as a table from our miniature perspective. There's a carving of a clock with a number 11 on it. Following up with this hint is what would get us the ring from that cuckoo clock, but my fidgeting with all the satisfying interactables of Leshy's cabin expedited that secret-seeking process. Leshy gives us one more chance to empower our deck.
Steps away from the strange cabin, you are presented with an opportunity. I don't offer my boons to just any traveler. If you are able to pass my trials, you will be rewarded mightily.
This is simple. It's much like the trials from the mysterious cave events. Suddenly, this motif of like this creature speaking to you from a cave, I feel like I've seen that somewhere, if not in Pony Island or maybe in Hex. Maybe I'm thinking about those blinking eyes that we see every so often in the Hex. That might be what I'm thinking of. My floppy senses are tingling in the same way regarding the trader-trapper dichotomy. Anyways, we choose a trial, and if within the next 3 drawn cards we draw one that fulfills the trial's conditions, we get to choose a powerful boon. I remember that I still have some pelts I never got around to selling, so I choose the trial of the pelts and it pays off. I choose the ambidextrous boon as my reward, which allows us, or more accurately, forces us to draw 2 cards a turn instead of 1. This essentially merges much of the tempo of the early and mid game together and allows us to set up more quickly. But the problem is, if you've been going out of your way to keep your deck consistent without too many cards bloating your deck, you will quickly run out of cards with this ambidextrous buff, initiating something called starvation. The next choice always has the trial of the ring card. If you are wearing the ring or have a ringworm or Ouroboros card, you win this trial. Now, this is the no-brainer of the century. The boon of the magpie is the go-to. In combination with the ambidextrous boon, with the right deck, you can fill up your board with powerful cards on turn 1. And so with this absolute arsenal of boons and cards, we press forward.
You managed to get both of my boons. I rarely say this, but I am impressed. You have been a worthy adversary, but unfortunately, I must soon put you to death.
Now this is trippy. We enter Leshy's cabin, walking into the continuity of how we ended up there in the first place. But now it's the conclusion of this run. Inscryption, Inception, Inscryption.
You took your time to get here, and I'm itching for another game. Are you ready to play?
Again, it's like an infinite loop of which its continuity we've just sort of jumped into. The end of the run being our character stumbling into the cabin that would lead us to play his game, wander in the forest, enter the cabin again at the very end. There's no denying it. There's got to be some sort of loop thing going on here. What came first, the tail or the mouth of the Ouroboros? What came first, the plate of meat or the person that ate the plate of meat that became the plate of meat? What happened first? Stumbling into the forest? Stumbling into Leshy's house? Or where we started, already in Leshy's cabin? It's kind of interesting. Just as there's an Ouroboros to signify a loop, there's also a lot of cards that are egg-themed, hatching eggs, like the raven's egg, the curious egg. I wonder if that's maybe a slight tie into the whole chicken egg thing, but that's severely more floppy. This is verging on masturbatory. Hard to do when your channel name is Cochino. Our candle is blown out, leaving us with only one chance to beat Leshy, and Leshy gives himself 3 candles. So this final boss will be in 3 phases. On turn 1, we absolutely smoke Leshy before his amalgam has a chance to even emerge. Normally in this phase, he will switch between the various boss abilities, from the gold pick strike to the angler's hook and the trader's card sale. But generally, the match never makes it to the trader segment. Either you get defeated or Leshy is forced into the next phase by that point.
Oh, interesting. Oh gosh.
You capably endured the onslaught of rare creatures, but the true challenge was forthcoming. Shadowy figures appear before you. In their eyes glimmered a recognition of kinship, but colored by guilt. They were betraying you. I remember that one fondly.
In the second phase, Leshy blocks off the board with an array of debris and death cards in pursuit. We push Leshy's trees in before these ghosts from the past have a chance to haunt us, and enter the final phase.
Yes. No way. We're about to beat him without even having to get the stunted wolf.
This damned moon. It's dramatic, yes, but it provides no value to my board. I wonder.
Now that is value.
Leshy takes a picture of the moon, capturing its light into his camera and onto the paper of a card, further establishing the means of which Leshy makes these cards, inscribes them, if you will. Much like how Carla's angler in Beneath the Surface fishes up the sun from beneath the surface, Leshy points his camera to the sky and captures the moon. Ooh, a mirror. A mirror, perhaps. Okay, gotcha. I'll keep that in mind. You don't worry about that, but keep this concept, this theme in mind. I have no idea what this could mean or be pointing to, but for God's sake, can't a man get floppy with it? Speaking of which, I haven't pointed out this new card I've come across. There are 3 tentacle variant cards whose descriptions are obscured by black ink. There is a mirror tentacle, which copies the damage of the card across from it, the bell tentacle, which increases in damage the closer it is to the table bell, up to 4 damage, and the hand tentacle, which does as much damage as the number of cards in your hand. Why are all these tentacles' descriptions obscured? This is where my curiosity of things, or themes of things being underneath the surface stems from. Before I decided to do a video on Inscryption, before even the Hex or Pony Island, when I just played this game for my own fun, there was something there, something pointing to beneath the sea, beneath the surface. This dredger, and while we will meet a character named the Dredger, and that actually is the Dredger, in a way this tentacle is also a mirror of that Dredger, dredging up old data and assets from beneath the surface. I sincerely hope we can figure out what this all means. I have an inkling, but we'll have to hold strong and be patient until the very end, or at least until we have a good solid picture. Perhaps these tentacles are pulling up various assets from beneath the sea. The cards, obviously, rhyme with the cards that we play with when we play with Leshy. The bell itself rhymes with the bell that we hit every time we want to end our turn. However, the mirror kind of perplexes me. Let's keep playing before I go insane. This is why I heavily encourage everybody to play this game if they haven't already, because sadly, my deck is so overtuned that this moon phase of Leshy is just not as intense and epic as it truly is. I'll try to make up for that by showcasing the uniqueness of this card. It does 1 damage to all 4 spaces, slowly whittling down your card's health. Its Mighty Leap sigil prevents us from doing damage to Leshy directly with flying cards. We have to fight the moon first and foremost. The sigil on the left is an orbital pull sigil, unique to the moon. It simply prevents you from leaving squirrels on the playing board. As intimidating as the moon is, generally speaking, it's more bark than it is bite, and that's something I think sums up Leshy's style perfectly. He rather the experience be fun, epic, stylish, than balanced and legitimately challenging. It's at this point many players may realize this is less a card battle game and more of a sort of overtuned deck building game, where the Gamemaster intentionally leaves blind spots in his own game design for us to abuse and exploit, giving us the illusion that we've discovered something we weren't supposed to. But now I'm truly getting ahead of myself. This is what happens when we beat the moon and, thusly, Leshy.
You really destroyed the moon. I suppose all that's left is to finish me off. Go on.
Oh my, I think I just beat him. Oh.
A camera on a tripod tips over. This confirms my suspicion. We technically aren't playing the game ourselves, but witnessing the gameplay of another character through their camcorder footage of this game. We see the startup logo of the camcorder and an interface for us to select recorded footage. We now have entered a sort of found footage segment of this. It's called Camworks. Camworks. Son of a... I'm gonna say this now because we're about to find this out anyways. Game Funa, the devilish game development company ran by a Lunatus, which was the heavy focus in the Hex, now seems to also be the developer of Inscryption, the physical card game. More on that in a moment. In the Hex, Game Funa owns a game development suite called the Game Works. Game Works. This allows Satan or Lunatus to mimic God's act of creation by creating sentient video game characters and, torturing them in both physical and existential ways. Game Works, Cam Works. If the software inside of this camera is linked to GameWorks, linked to Game Funa, then this company has achieved a level of integration that Teddy Roosevelt would have no part in. I have no idea. Would that be considered a monopoly? That's vertical integration, or is that horizontal integration? Lucifer himself, or at the very least, Satan, has his gross little devil finger in video games, in tabletop games, and now even software and home tech. Our protagonist, Luke Carter, is more wrapped up in this than we may have initially realized on our first playthrough of this game. Keep this in mind.
You want to get super floppy with it? Let's get super floppy with it. Before the Camworks logo comes up, we see a sun rising. What is a sun but just a star? It's a dawn star. In other words, it's Lucifer. A hiding in plain sight hint. We didn't even need this. We know that the Camworks and GameWorks, we have plenty of evidence as it is, but this is just another small thing. I just love it. I love noticing this stuff. Okay, enough excitement. Let's keep going.
So let's go ahead and sift through this footage. September 15 is when Luke Carter, a budding CCG YouTuber, gets his camera and fiddles with it for a moment. On that same day, he records an episode where he opens a pack of Catch Monsters. This card game will briefly come up much later in the ARG, but for now, I'm not entirely sure if this too is a Game Funa property. He mentions hoping to pull a rare, shiny card, Transcendog.
And digging for that epic, shiny Transcendog! And here I'll add some crazy VFX with lightning bolts or something.
This concept of transcendence will come up again. It'll come up at the end of the second chapter of this series. The rare he pulls from this pack is a Birchkin.
Okay, and our first rare is a Birchkin.
Again, this will come up once again much later in the series when we go over the ARG. It's common practice in the various card games to have guaranteed numbers of varying rarities. For example, simply put, in this Inscryption card game or card pack that Luke Carter is opening, there is always one guaranteed rare card. Evidently, from what he says, hopefully this rare card is the Transcendog! But it's not the same for all card games. You see, you've got different things. Pokemon is like this one right here. It's a straight up crapshoot. Silver Tempest Booster Pack contains 10 cards in either one basic energy or one V-Star marker. I don't even know what V-Star is. That's how much of a boomer I am. This one is a bit more comprehensive, though. This is the Magic the Gathering New Capenna, Streets of New Capenna. This is the Bioshock edition, ladies and gentlemen. This one includes 1 to 4 cards of rarity, rare or higher, so at least one rare. An art card. 3 to 7 uncommon, 3 to 7 common, 1 land, which is the same thing as an energy, or the same thing as a squirrel or skeleton. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is an example of an art card. Pretty neat, huh? Pretty flippin' neat. Lands, this is the squirrels of Magic the Gathering, essentially speaking. Broken Wings, Wrecking Crew, Mayhem Control, Forge Boss, Fatal Grudge. Ooh, look, they got me in here. They got the Pugnacious Pugilist. That looks like me. That's the body goal right there. Pyre Sledge Arsonist. Maestro's Charm. This looks like it's pretty. This looks neat. Right here, Maestro's Charm. Ooh, a shiny land card? That's gotta be something. The Botanical Plaza. Meet me in Santa Clarita. Actually, no, where is the Botanical Gardens located? Ah, it's a green It's a green-white card. You know, when I was in high school, I was Team Bulgogi. You know, I was the Golgari. I was a green-black, but I think I've developed into a green-white as I've mellowed out and explored my religiosity. So yeah, you got a guaranteed foil, one foil, an art card, a rare, all that jazz. This is so fun. This is so addicting. You know, they should do a thing like in video games where instead of selling skins, you can open a box and you might get a skin. Okay, so this is Pokemon. Now this one, Noibat, Snorunt, Sandile, I'm a big dark type guy, Fennekin, hold on, Murkrow, Wailord, Braviary, I got an energy card, Toracat, Dragonair. These are dog shit. Oh! It's just shiny Wailord. That's cute. That's actually pretty cute. So maybe it is one guaranteed per pack. Now, I already know what you're thinking. Floppycock. Where would I hypothetically be able to source cards like this if I happen to be in the ballpark area of Southern California? Well, the role-playing game. In my opinion, it's one of the most profound of gaming experiences. No other category combines so many aspects like the RPG does. Storytelling, tactics and strategy, decision-making, and most importantly, imagination, all wrapped up into one of the most holistic of gaming experiences. But alas, with the advent of high-fidelity graphics, one needn't imagine any longer. Your console or computer does that for you. That's why I believe no matter how advanced video gaming gets, nothing will ever beat the timelessness of the tabletop. GMI Games is the Inland Empire's largest game store, a one-stop shop for all of your board game, card collecting, and hobbyist needs. So whether you're a Pokemon trainer from Riverside County, a planeswalker from Inland Empire, or a Southern Californian orc from the year 40,000 trying to manifest his next great battle, make GMI Games your go-to store for your tabletop gaming needs. Big thank you to GMI for letting us film on their location. They didn't pay me for that, by the way. There was no payment. That was just my genuine gratitude. This is the first time we ever reached out to a business, and they were super on board. They opened early they were very nice people, nice folks out there. So I wanted to give them a little bit of something cute, you know. I had a very brief MTG stint in high school, and I believe my first card, if not my second, third, basically all the rest of my packs, I got from GMI. This was way back in high school. And so to find out recently, you know, before even starting this project, that they were still open even after the pandemic, I was super stoked. And then a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, maybe I can do a skit here. Shot in the dark, they were super cool about it. And so again, thank you so much, GMI. If you are in the area and you're a big gamer, give them a try. Check them out.
Feeling even better about this one. I gotta say, these cards are feeling extra silky today. I mean, they're so smooth. Not sure what they're doing down there at the card factory, but these are feeling good in my hands.
He mentions that the cards are feeling extra silky today. Silky, like the gossamer of a spider, the motif commonly associated with Sado, the magic evil clown from the Hex. I'm kidding.
Bandog! Not exactly riveting so far, but we have many packs to go.
The rare he pulls from this next pack is Bandog. On further research, I've come to find out that this is based off of a demo that Daniel Mullins developed way back in 2014. I don't have this written down here, but I really like it. I really like the demo. It reminds me a lot of the old Adventure Quest games. Is it Adventure Quest? The ones where it's like really janky flash animations? There's something real kino about it. I really like it. In this 2014 indie Kickstarter demo, the Transcendog isn't featured, but the Birchkin and Bandog are, however. The Birchkin is a mystical monster that's a pacifist, healing anytime we use an ability that does no damage. The Bandog is a hyperactive animal, being able to use more than one move in a turn. Huh. I'm gonna get floppy for a second. I'm very proud. I think I hit the nail on the head. If I have made many misses in this thing, I think I hit the nail on the head with this thing. Keep this in mind for Act 2. This doesn't really matter for anything, but I'm quite proud of making this connection. The Birchkin, a wooden humanoid that's a pacifist, meaning it doesn't fight back. And the Bandog, simply put, a hyperactive character. Keep these in mind for Act 2 when we explore a certain mage's tower and meet a couple of characters that fit this build quite perfectly. There's also a clear similarity staring us in the face with Catch Monsters. We can choose between two different card sets, a bestial, primal, animalistic card set, and a mystical, magical, gem, and crystal-based card set. The former matches perfectly with Leshy's preferred style, and the latter won't be explored until Act 2 when we are introduced to another kind of playstyle based around magic and gems. Anyways, keep this in mind. Even if all that is pure floppiness, I do think that this Transcendog mention is foreshadowing this theme of transcendence. Again, that won't be really revealed and explored until much later in Act 2. This footage is cut short by a phone call. On October 2nd, Luke Carter seems extra excited this episode.
Hey there, card gamers! I'm the Lucky Carter, and this is a vintage pack opening video. Today I'm opening a few super rare old packs I snagged at a garage sale. I've got 4 packs of Inscryption. You would not believe the deal I got on these. Now, not all of you will even remember this game. I'm barely old enough to have seen these going around in my childhood. For whatever reason, they only did one set of these cards and then stopped printing them. There's not a huge market for them anymore, but at the rate it got them for, there's not really much to lose. That being said, a foil Mantis God goes for a couple $100, so fingers crossed.
Just one set of Inscryption, and they stopped making them. Suspicious, but I don't know if it's unheard of.
And our rare for this pack is Blue Mage. Cool looking card, but not going to be worth very much.
Hold on. Blue Mage. There was no such card in the Inscryption we just played. This would be our first hint that the game that we are playing on our computer screen is not the bona fide Inscryption. There are no blue mages. And later on we'll see on the card there's a skeleton card. There are no skeletons in Inscryption. This is not the entirety of Inscryption, but a heavily altered, highly stylized version created in the image of Leshy. I have failed to mention this on so many different opportunities, so I'm going to say this now. It's very interesting. Leshy is an actual mythological creature. It means of the forests. In fact, the name Lesnik or Lesniki also means from the forest, which is mind-blowing. I think someone left a comment similar to that on my Jennifer's Body video, but it's insane how we're going full circle here. It's insane. But anyways, back to this. This version of Inscryption is the version Leshy feels is the most enjoyable. That's why many of these various aspects that we will become more familiar with in Chapter 2 were locked away. The paintbrush and the hammer are locked to the wall. The only 2 economies we have access to are the bone and blood. Energy and gems are not used in this version of Inscryption. And to be honest with you, Leshy kind of has a point. This chapter of Inscryption, this style, is by far the biggest fan favorite. Keep this idea that there's much more to Inscryption than meets the eye in mind. Luke Carter notices something suspicious with the second pack he's opening. He finds that one of the skeleton cards has coordinates written on them. Just a day later, on October 3rd, he goes on a hike, much like the figurines are hiking in Leshy's take on Inscryption. With a headlamp and shovel, he follows the coordinates written on the skeleton card until
a massive waste of
his camera glitches out. He mentions in the next footage having brought a battery replacement. Was this Game Funa working through the camworks to prevent Luke from finding what was buried? Was this another character from within the Gameworks, now Camworks, working to prevent Luke from stumbling into Leshy's strange machinations? The next footage is just labeled Error. Error. Sado. It's got to be Sado. She's referred to as an error by Katerina, the seer from the Hex. Created in the Hex by Carla by pushing the Gameworks to its limit. So naturally, this error that is present in the software of the GameWorks is present in the software of the CamWorks. Maybe Sato isn't trying to prevent anything. Maybe she's just messing with Luke. In the next footage, we see Luke continuing his trek. Much like how Rust and Rocky from the Hex found a cache at the end of their short journey in the Hex, Luke finds a geocache, a red floppy disk labeled Inscryption. Based on his reaction, and of course some information we will come across in the upcoming footage, there was never a widely released Inscryption video game. At least not publicly released.
Guys, are you seeing this? I'm a little confused.
On that same day, when he gets home, he records himself shopping for a new floppy drive for the floppy disk. He mentions that the price of a floppy disk drive is cheaper than a foil Steambot Willie. That's a character from the Hex. Steambot Willie is from the Hex. Well, specifically within the Hex, he is from the fighter game Combat Arena X, a video game developed by Game Funa. If Game Funa is the owner and proprietor of Inscryption, then is there a Combat Arena X card game? Maybe a Secret of Legendaria card game? One more thing I want to mention is the items on Luke's desk. There's a mask, a squirrel figurine, some playing cards, and a candle peeking out from behind a lamp, somewhat resembling a candle atop a candlestick. All thematically similar items that are implemented into Leshy's Inscryption. Perhaps this is just a clever Easter egg, or I'm just getting floppy with it. But if I really wanted to get floppy with it, I'd point out that the way the shape of the lamp from our perspective kind of looks, and the mask's positioning under it kind of looks like the mushroom cap mycologist mask peering at Luke. Now that's floppy and creepy. A week later on October 10th, 10/10, a little bit of binary theming there. The floppy drive is delivered, and this is the footage.
Okay, time to figure out what's on this thing.
Luke says in the same fashion that we hear in the beginning of this game, okay, time to see what's on this thing, signifying that this is where the gameplay, or I should say footage of gameplay, canonically starts. Everything we've experienced is footage of the game from this point. We exit the interface and continue where we left off. Having just beat Leshy, we are greeted with a pile of meat with a birthday candle in it. We will come to find out that that same pile of meat is what the prospector uses to feed his bloodhound. But that's neither here nor there. We sit there not exactly pleased with this prize, and despite having beat Leshy, we still get dragged into his back room.
I do not celebrate often, and I seldom give gifts. But you, challenger, you are worthy. Please do not be polite. Dig in. Is there something wrong? Your prize awaits. Very well. Come with me. Stand right there.
His camera is within reach again. We grab it, only again to find out that there's no film inside of it. Despite winning, we still get captured by his camera, but instead of a death card, we now have a victory card that he proudly hangs on his door.
You, challenger, are a champion, and I wish to commemorate your victory. Please inscribe your name. Shh, do not despair. You are a winner.
Okay, it's time to see what's on this thing. Okay, desk is installed. Now all we got left to do is to crack this game using the keygen. These keygen songs are always such bangers. It's done. Alrighty, let's go. Network. Never heard of that production company. Oh, okay, we're just jumping right into it. Find any identification among your belongings. Before I read you your rights, you want to stop being cute and tell me, what's your name?
Hello, I'm the Gamemaster. I come enabled with your copy of Desk. Please type in your name. If you'd like to disable the tutorials, please go...
Alrighty, I'll just go ahead and type my name.
You think this is some sort of joke? You son of a bitch. I knew you had something to do with the disappearance. Wait till Captain O'Jobs hears about this.
What the hell? That's stupid. What, is my name banned or something? There are worse things I could have typed, I assure you, Detective. I'll just go ahead and restart.
We couldn't find any identification among your belongings. Before I read you your rights, you want to stop being cute and tell me, what's your name?
I forgot to mention, you can always remain silent.
Alright.
Playing coy still. That's fine, we'll find out your name soon enough. Well, this is the part where I remind you that you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You also have the right to an attorney. Choose your attorney.
Thank God above you found me.
What the hell? How'd that get in there?
I might not be the best lawyer, but you can count on my faith and creativity. And no need to make a choice between us three. These two others are always on retainer. You'll want to put together a solid legal team. I've got another friend of mine hidden in here somewhere. Sly as a fox, that one. There was another voice, though. I didn't know him too well, but he seemed to be acquainted with this detective. Seemed he wanted to be left alone, hiding away in his shell.
Enough talk. Let's get started. After fading into the light, we see a bushy figure in this sort of dream segment, painting us a hint with the same brush that is locked on the wall to our left from the player's seat in Leshy's cabin.
The knife. The key is the knife.
The character is pointing us to the knife. He wants us to interact with that knife again. It seems that this is the key to the next step of freeing the stunted wolf, the final talking card. After seeing this dream hint cutscene for the first time, we can even hear Luke say, "Whoa," just to remind us that what we are seeing is what he is seeing. Full disclosure, there's some stuff on here that's already been revealed. My camera battery died, and when the camera battery dies while it's recording, it corrupts all the footage. And so normally when that happens, and it's happened a couple times in the past, I'll just erase the whole whiteboard and start from the beginning, but I'm not doing that with this. This is special to me. This one's very special. Apologies for some of these spoilers. Now, this is the first time we're seeing that bushy character with the paintbrush in our dreams, giving us hints as to what to do next. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to jump the shark, or the gun, or the dolphin cannon once again, and reveal that this character is Magnificus, the true identity of the stunted wolf. The stunted wolf we've still have yet to meet. And so since I've revealed that the stunted wolf has a true identity, we will soon find out that the stoat and stinkbug also have a true identity. In the meantime, check out the stinkbug and stoat's cards. The stoat's head is gaining some sort of border, and his neck is strangely veiny. But look at the stinkbug. She looks much less like a stinkbug and more like a person. Note the markings on her face. They look very similar to the diamond markings on Sato's face. What could this possibly mean? I take a short reprieve and take a gander at my victory card. This Leshy can be defeated. I can speed through this, maybe skim over the little secrets that don't play a role in the larger mystery. But no, I'm having a bit too much fun. Now that we've met that big bushy painter in our death-rattled dreams, it's about time I show you what's locked behind those painting puzzles. Full disclosure, as I said before, I used a save editor to cheat in the needed cards for these puzzles. I'm an explorer, not a completionist. Remember, we need to place the cards in the same order that we see them in the painting. Mind you, you can sit up from the table when you're on the map, but not in the middle of a card battle, so make sure you memorize that card order, because it does matter. You'll know when the puzzle is solved when you see the screen get all kind of watercolor-like. The first boon of Magnificus is a little potted plant with a clover in it. This allows us to re-roll anytime we get a set of cards to choose from. We unlock the final cabinet compartment to gain the squirrel totem head. So now we can apply totem sigils to all of our squirrels. Taking advantage of the totem system, applying the sigils to the squirrels, your economy cards, could potentially take your deck to a level of sheer absurdity. It's usually at this point, even people who have played this game for the first time will be able to just beat Leshy no problem. My favorite combination is this one, Unkillable Squirrels, allowing you to reuse the squirrels you sacrifice, moving at a faster tempo than Leshy. This absolutely trivializes the Prospector boss fight because we maintain our economy even after losing our cards to the gold pickaxe ability. Think of it this way, so long as you have 3 or 4 squirrels in your hand, you only at that point need to draw from your main deck. You're done, your economy's finished. We pick up a knife and some pliers. These two items combined together put enough weight on the scale to beat any card battle from the very beginning. We are also introduced to a new kind of item. Leshy tells us we don't want this, but I mean, look at him. He seems polite. In the next battle, I dig for eye boogers. Oh, that's what I mean. I'm like, what the f was I saying? I see, okay. In the next battle, I dig for eye boogers, extreme style, and blindly try to find my pliers, accidentally clicking on the jar of goo. Leshy wants us to avoid talking to this jar of goo. I imagine this sentient pile of slime is another source of hints to achieve victory.
I am serious, you cannot use that. There's no possible use for it. I'll place it on the shelf over there for now. My advice, avoid it.
My death card compendium is still missing a certain detective, so I buy a bunch of rabbit pelt cards and throw the game. With the cost of a rabbit card, the stats of a grizzly, and the sigil of an unkillable corpse maggot, I get my finest creation yet. Detective Viewer.
That's right, detective. Get floppy with it.
Something isn't right. It seems a deep primordial force is emerging to carry you off into eternity.
You know what that means, Breton? It's time to fight.
Fight an idea? Now that's hardcore.
The other place is being besieged as we speak. In your mind, a fox, peacock, and hermit crab are trapped in the paper of a card, on the screen of a computer, in the poor writing of a skit. How contrived.
Run, detective! Your mother's calling you.
Despite your mind being quite finite, it seems to come from a larger expanse. A mother brain, if you will. A single word comes to mind.
Network?
And while your finite mind doesn't know what to make of it, the mother brain knows exactly what this means. You were meant to lose this fight.
Fuck that!
I'm confiscating this.
Detective, over here! You can't spell Breton without...
Rat? Tan? No. Maybe if you concentrate hard enough, you can make your tie turn into a bat.
So I could cultivate its poop and sell it for a profit?
No. So you can beat this meme with force.
Damn it. He screwed with the compression process. It's alright. This'll have to do.
How is this game not over yet?
After my fourth defeat against Leshy, I get up from the table and talk to the slime. I turn to the right, however, and see a strange robot. Walking towards it causes it to disappear with those glitchy black bars on the screen, a common motif of Daniel Mullins. This scene foreshadows something that's going to take place in the 3rd chapter, which is interesting. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is a robotic camera, specifically the robotic camera that we will see in Act 3. It won't be relevant until then, but it is fitting how we see a camera from Act 3 within Leshy's cabin, Leshy being known for his legendary camera. But there's a detail here. This asset shouldn't exist. If we follow the continuity of the game as if it were linear, the asset of this camera should have been created at the point of the start of Act 3. But no, it's floating to the surface. And just for a quick moment, we caught a glimpse of the flotsam. Maybe this points to Inscryption, the grand game, the larger 3-act game of Inscryption, as to not being a linear set of events, but a ever-existing loop of events. All assets that will ever be created for this game existing either in the game or beneath its surface. And this is just one of those moments where something inappropriate to this spoke of the wheel has simply resurfaced. I genuinely hope I remember this moment, because I don't think I'm just being floppy anymore. I think this is a foreshadowing. This is a larger wink and a hint to the true nature of this story. I unlock the 2nd painting puzzle boon, a 3rd candle, essentially giving us an extra life. Still though, during boss fights, all but one of our candles are extinguished. Oh, I almost forgot, I should go talk to that bottle of goo. I talk to the goo one more time in case there's a hint he has for me.
Ah! The pain is unbearable! Even after all these years! What do you want? I have very little to live for these days. Ah! You really did it! I knew I had seen stuff come out of that painting. Bring it here. Ah! I watched that dagger do its work. For a moment, I felt that my misery had company. Oh, but it had its own noble purpose. Surely a step towards freeing the master.
He refers to the stunted wolf as his master, so this minor character's allegiance is not to Leshy, but that large bushy creature. Okay, enough wasting time. Let's go ahead and play until we get a knife. Before that, though, here's a cool little interaction.
No, let's just keep it quick. After your 3rd run, if you feed a ringworm to the campfire people, you will essentially poison them, allowing you to risk-free upgrade your cards at any future campfires that run. Also, now that we have that extra candlestick and the greater smoke, we will pull 2 greater smokes at every boss fight. After enough runs, Luke will make certain comments, like saying, "Die already" at the boss fights, and "Gotta get the Mantis God" when selecting the Mantis God. Also, I have some pretty cool footage of the strange larva evolving twice into the Mothman. A pretty damn powerful card for a 1 cost.
I stab my eye, and before I replace it with another eye inside the wooden box, I take a closer look. There's a goat eye, a magical eye, and 8 other eyes. Now, those figurines that we've been playing with recur in all acts of Inscryption, and there are 8 of them. So perhaps these 8 other eyes signify 8 avatars that are constantly circulating throughout this game. I'm not entirely sure though. Big shout out to Hylian Angel on Reddit for doing some research and posting the pictures of these characters on Reddit. We have those 8 eyes accounted for, but what about the goat eye? Where did Leshy get a goat eye from? And that magical eye? We place the magical eye in our socket, revealing a bunch of invisible paint. This magical eye evidently belongs to Magnificus, that big bushy painter of whom is the true identity of the stunted wolf, the card we have still yet to meet. And if these 8 eyes correlate to 8 unnamed victims, 8 of those extra figurines, and this magical eye belongs to Magnificus, who does the goat eye belong to? Taxidermists in the comment section, can you go ahead and let me know what animal does the Bone Lord's skull come from?
I realize I don't have to be a taxidermist or biologist to compare the shapes and looks of a goat's skull to the Bone Lord's skull, and yeah, they're the same. So the Bone Lord's head, at the very least, is the form of a goat, so perhaps the goat eye comes from the Bone Lord. Perhaps it was extracted from him in Leshy's process of neutralizing the Bone Lord to be just a minor mechanic in his game, because otherwise the Bone Lord is quite an enigmatic character.
If it comes from an animal with those horizontal eyes like a goat, then perhaps this eye belongs to the Bone Lord.
Once we replace our eye with Magnificus's eye, we can read on the wooden chest, "Find salvation in the cuckoo clock." We mosey on over to the clock to see that the invisible paint indicates where to turn the hands. Placing the hands of the clock to indicate 4:25 at 5 seconds causes the bottom compartment to open up. Placing the hands on the clock to indicate 4 hours, 25 minutes, and 5 seconds causes the bottom compartment to open, revealing the stunted wolf. But why those numbers? I'm not exactly sure. 4255, maybe 451 perhaps? These numbers won't come up again, not even in the Inscryption ARG as far as I know. But who knows? Maybe they will reemerge in Pony Island 2's ARG. Maybe we'll come across a stunted panda. The stunted wolf beckons to us to take the film roll, but Leshy's demands thoroughly shiver my timbers.
Take the film roll before he sees it. Now! What are you doing over there? Turn to face me.
So I pick up the stunted wolf about face and sit my ass back down. Note that the stunted wolf is missing an eye. Even better, within the darkness of the bottom compartment of the cuckoo clock, the only thing the player can see is the glint of its single eye. The original footage of this segment was so good because I was like, boo, 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 coming up with stuff on the fly. And it was so natural and it was so good. But now I've already jumped the gun here and revealed to you that Magnificus is the true identity of the stunted wolf. But now I'm going to go a little bit more further and bring back those motifs we discussed in the Hex video. I refer to these as the one-eyed devils. These characters that had this repeating motif of single eyes. Valamir, a cycloptic ghost. Sado, having only one eye revealed, her hair being parted a certain way. In the lost footage, I noticed something. I joked, I said, Illuminati confirmed. And I'm like, hold on, that's an actual thing from Pony Island. The whole Illuminati confirmed thing in Pony Island, is Sado a character, was like retroactively a character in Pony Island? And the third character that is a part of this one-eyed devil motif from the Hex is Jeremiah. Now, he evidently has 2 eyes, but he has one strong eye and one weak eye, being helped by a monocle. A minor goal in this larger investigation is to figure out what characters from previous Daniel Mullins games are bubbling up to the surface and into these Inscryption characters. We've already done that quite well with the Bandog and the Birchkin bubbling up beneath the surface, up to the surface, and into these 2 characters that we have yet to meet and will meet in Act 2. However, if you have played the Hex, you will recognize this character. It's the training dummy. Again, another motif bubbling up to the surface. And so one of my goals is to figure out, okay, who is Leshy? Who is the Stoat? Who is the Stinkbug? Who is Magnificus? At this point, super confident, somewhat confident, flimsy. I'm getting there, though. I'm getting there. Now that the stunted wolf is in our deck, he has a conversation with the Stoat.
I ought to thank you. How has it been? It has been quite bad. I am trapped in the body of a stoat, in the paper of a card. I see that, and I have, of course, set up a way to reset once more. Go on. Our player friend here, they already hold the key.
Trapped in the body of a stoat in the paper of a card. This would be a more clear indication that these woodland collectibles have true identities and are trapped by Leshy in this game. But how far does this go? We have 4 characters, Leshy, Magnificus, whoever the Stoat and Stinkbug are, being equals amongst each other, yet also antagonistic with one another. As somebody who's beat Inscryption, who is somewhat familiar with the ARG, I can tell you that reminds me a lot of these 4 characters, Reginald, Lewis, Kaminsky, and Casey. Does that tell us that these characters are the true identities of these characters? That these are maybe developers, human beings, players, trapped in the bodies of characters, in the bodies of animals, on the paper of a card? I'm not convinced, but I still wanted to bring it up in case we do go somewhere with it, or that's a pet theory of yours. I want you to be heard, but that's not my. I'm not convinced. I think these characters and these characters are quite separate. With all 3 talking cards in our army, we beat the rest of the bosses and make it to Leshy a second time, only this time to secure a single boon.
You're back. Sit.
We hear Luke state,
Well, looks like I'll have to beat him again.
again reminding us that every single subsequent run we're playing in this active Inscryption, Luke is playing along with us. Now, learn from my mistake here. If I only had taken note of the items that I had to my disposal, I would have noticed that I had a black goat and wouldn't have wasted so much of my economy to play my great white shark. That being said, I utilized the overkill damage mechanic masterfully here. The prospector raises his Midas Touch pick, but his strike is delayed by us beating the first phase.
The moon-soaked forest bed gave rise to shadowy figures, gasping for night air after their long and torturous slumber. Ah, yes, I remember that one.
We are accosted by Louis and the Hermit, so even our own death cards can be used in this second phase. And sadly, this is the only time we ever get to see the Hermit in this entire playthrough. Now, I'm in a stuck spot. I have a lot of powerful cards on the deck. Even with the wolf, I won't do enough damage this turn to beat the phase and avoid all my cards being turned to gold by the prospector. That is until I notice the fan item, which for one turn turns all of my cards into flying cards. So you have witnessed the only time in history this item has ever seen its value realized.
This ought to work again.
And for the second time, we see Leshy fall to our masterwork. Sacrifices must be made, and made them we did.
You're not the first to triumph over the moon, but go on, finish it. You had won the respect of the strange cabin's inhabitant. Your body quaked as the adrenaline of the battle subsided, leaving you with a gnawing hunger you had not eaten for days. Is it not so? Woo! Surely this food will please you. I took extra care in preparing it. Really? This does not meet your standards? Very well.
We get the camera once again, but without the film we fail to capture Leshy. I don't mind. This digital avatar is worth sacrificing for another go at Leshy's game.
Yes. That's my legendary camera. And no, it does not function without a loaded film roll. You're a champion, and I wish to memorialize you. Please inscribe your name. Be still now. You won.
So, we come to our first boss battle. Tell me, does this mask look familiar to you?
The hell? That does look familiar.
Maybe this will jog your memory. It's with heavy heart and heavy balls I sacrifice this criminal to Tofu, Principality of Flesh. We can place you at the scene. The bound victim, the cult leader, which is you, a cage, and a dancing cultist.
Well, I guess I gotta defend my case. I'll take out what I can and block what I can't take out.
We've got some help from these other cards. The aloof lawyer does a good job countering evidence with cultist tags. Judge Rando replaces the enemy card in front of it with a random enchantment. This can either make or break your strategy. Choose carefully.
What? You were the victim? No, but that can't be.
Really? Must you pull me from the other side?
What kind of game is this?
Oh look, it's Detective Viewer. I'm Peacock. Nice to meet you, Hermit Crab. Likewise, Peacock. That's a familiar name, but you are not a familiar person. Have you seen a fox anywhere on your way here? Can't say I have. I believe you and your fox friend come from a different epoch than the detective and I. While the detective is known for his investigation of the physical realm, I like to explore the inner world.
Enough talk. This might be a free country, but there are limits to those liberties. Unless you want to exercise your Fifth Amendment rights, or in other words, quit this game, let's keep playing. Magnificus sends us another death rattle dream hint, reminding us that we forgot the film.
That foul, stunted wolf? You really want such a creature in your deck? The sight of it does try my temper, but it has been dealt, so it stands.
All that's left to unlock is the third painting puzzle. We do so, and now our squirrels are replaced with bees. So now instead of our economy being made up of 0 cost 0 blank squirrels, we now have 0 cost 1 flying bees, which benefit from the insect totem. After this run, we will also get a free insect top totem. Honestly, Leshy, at this point, with my 4 powerful death cards at my disposal, and access to mechanics both intended and not intended, I'm starting to think I'm not trapped here with you, but you are trapped here with me. So we reach another Rubicon. Tell me, suspect, do you dream a lot? Or perhaps do you like to invade other people's dreams?
What? Who the f made this game?
Maybe you aren't the cult leader, but a robed criminal nonetheless. So how about you tell me? Look familiar?
That mask. And that song. I've heard this song before. Before even playing this game, I've heard this song before.
Alright, the Dreamweaver, a table, the victim, and a cat? But look closely, Peacock, he's hiding something. That's weird. His next card is a plate of food? Not only that, whatever evidence you defeat player will trigger him to place this plate of food in its place. Unless this is familiar to you, player, ignore the cat and try to whittle down the most damning evidence. No, I'm sensing this is relevant on a conscious level. Follow your mind, player, and I will follow your lead.
Looks like your guilty verdict might be your undoing. If you do get the death penalty, what would be your final meal?
There was a cat on a counter, and it disappeared. And in its place, there was a Tupperware of...
No. Let's move on.
Finally, it's about time you got yourself some real legal advocacy.
During that little montage, you may have noticed that static card. When coming across it for the first time, Leshy gives a bunch of binary text as its description. Translating it gives us deep beneath. Again, further pointing us to this motif, this theme of things submerged beneath the surface, in the blue forgotten depths of old data. Keep this in mind. The mechanics of this static card is that every time you draw it, it glitches out and transforms into a different random card from your deck. So this card is a glitch that mimics the facades of other cards, much like Sato, which is a glitch that mimics the voices of other characters. Much like Lucifer, who is a glitchy developer who speaks in the voices of others. Some other things I don't want my frivolous dramatic sequence to overshadow is in that run, we came across Casey's death card for the first time. The final of the 4 pre-existing death cards. Now she is the keep in mind of the century. And how fitting that within these runs that I meet Casey, I find this strange item. Beneath the figurines, we'll sometimes find a tarot card. It glitches away when we try interacting with it. Shall I jump the shark? Shall I hop the dolphin? Should I perhaps leap upon the Portuguese man of war? Out of fear that I will forget this, I'm going to mention this. This card that glitches out of our grasp comes from the 3rd act. It's one of many tarot cards we can get descriptions of from a character that we've already met. This card specifically that we find glitched out of Leshy's cabin is the Empress. When getting a description of the Empress in Act 3, Casey is mentioned. That's all I'll say about that. So naturally, the card that exclusively mentions Casey, the Empress, makes me want to say that Casey is the Empress, or the Empress card signifies Casey in some way, a symbolic indicator. There's another tarot card we'll find in Act 3 that signifies Reginald's story, possibly one that signifies Louis, but we specifically see Casey's tarot card in this segment, in Leshy's Inscryption. I think this is foreshadowing Casey's mod, the post-game of the grand game of Inscryption. Again, this is pointing us to the final fate of this game, or at least the post-game that we experience of this game, already pre-existing beneath the surface, even in these early acts. But this is not a foreshadowing. Foreshadowing implies an artistic or coincidental motif or theme that acts as a harbinger for a later event on a linear timeline. I would argue this is not foreshadowing, but a re-emergence, an echo across the circumference of the Ouroboros. We'll save that for the third act of this series. For now, let's go ahead and beat Leshy in our final run against him. I've had enough sacrificing for one day.
What are you up to over there?
I take a final look at the victory cards to relish in the absolute smackdown we've laid on Leshy. Then I have a final conversation with the jar of goo.
Ah, it is done! The master is free! Ah, the end must be close now. If Magnificus is free, it must be close. Ah, watching the angler lose. Now that soothed my pain. An old rival of mine, that fisherman. He bested me this time, but I will have another chance.
The angler and jar of goo are rivals. Interesting. This is the first time a minor character is referring to another minor character. And this also reveals that the angler is an actual character, not just a mask that Leshy wears. We will get a better look at the larger cast of characters and their various allegiances in the second chapter of this investigation. I fiddle with all the furniture one last time. I take a gander at the empty painting, this time with Magnificus's eye in my socket, and I see some strange splotches. I'm not sure if there's something specifically being spelt out here. Superimposing the game board onto it didn't yield anything of note to me. Maybe this is just to signify that these paintings are of the same doing of the owner of this eye and painter of these markings, Magnificus. Perhaps this would be a detail we would appreciate on repeated playthroughs, but probably overlooked on our first. If we go back to the bottle of goo with Magnificus's eye...
Keep sealed.
Could it be? You have the master's eye. Does this mean the master can see me? Magnificence, can you see me? Can you free me?
It says keep sealed.
It seems he's requesting for us to keep this bottle sealed. Funnily enough, the master that this goo worship wishes for his creation to be sealed away. Those same splotches can be seen bordering this text, so perhaps this is just Magnificus's signature of sorts. Not sure. We make a final visit to the trapper, and as we're about to sacrifice the bullfrog to the stoat, I notice that the stoat has transformed into something more technological. His head is resembling a computer screen. The stunted wolf's transformation seems to be a little bit more subtle. His first form closely resembling the wolf card, but now a scruffy mass of fur resembling his true bushy form. In the true fashion of Leshy's game, I sacrifice the stink bug to make the stunted wolf all the more repugnant. I say goodbye to the prospector in our last fight. Poison the hungry campers one last time. Let the pack rat in on the action for one final ride. I then say au revoir to the angler. I visit the woodcarver one more time, pondering as to whether or not she was the one to carve those wooden figurines. And just in time for our final run, I craft the ultimate card, the unkillable black goat. I then create an infinite loop of Ouroboros power increase, even though at this point it's already well over the necessary power level. Despite this cheese...
We still lost. We still lost. It's funny.
I discover the true power of my death cards, hoping that after this chapter I will at least get to see them once again. I say goodbye to the trapper, buy out the trader's stock, and then say goodbye to her as well.
Let's go. Oh my gosh.
Checking the ground for traps, you carefully stepped forth. You glimpsed what appeared to be the light of candles in the distance. Let me think.
I create the most
meant to
vile
summon
combination
somebody.
known to card kind.
Yes, that's what I'm tizocking up is out. Of course we do the. Of course, it's the Ouroboros. Of course. Surely our tribulation.
I'm ready to play.
I'm ready to play. Are you?
I'm ready to play.
Within this final fight, I drop a couple verbal bangers.
Ooh, giving us a bad hand to challenge us? To ice bucket challenge us? Okay. Well, you know what we can do? We can put a smelly, stunted wolf right over his ear. Fecundity on these fecunditties. The Urayuli. The Urayuli chez avec moi ce soir. Oh, barely did it. Stump. Reginald and Casey. My arch nemarchisis. Okay. Oh, we didn't need to do that. Oh, you didn't need to do that. Oh, shit. The moon is waning. So much value. Oh, that was dumb of me. Oh, it doesn't even matter anyway.
And we beat Leshy once and for all. Oh, I hadn't mentioned I grabbed the film earlier. Having grabbed the film earlier from the cuckoo clock, we can finally finish this feud, and it seems that Leshy's dialogue seems to reflect the finality of this sequence.
Another challenger has bested Leshy, great scribe of beasts, and I fear our time may be drawing to a close. It seems nothing I do can prolong my reign here, since you got involved. Oh, you will see in time that you should have simply let things be. Is it not what you're used to? Around here, this is considered a delicacy. You've done me a great disrespect. Come with me. Right through here. Stand here. Who gave you that? You absolute ingrate! Give it back!
Leshy is now trapped in his card, but unlike his counterparts, not in the body of an animal. Perhaps because the man is already so given to the beastly nature, it makes no difference. The devilish double meaning of the beast isn't lost on me. We look to our right to see a bunch of dead bodies piled in the corner, likely to signify the victims of this apex predator Leshy. Some of them evidently made up of the bodies we must have lost in our defeats against him. We take a closer look at the poor bastard, wondering if this was the right decision, that he might have been right in saying that we will wish we never thwarted his plans, upended his reign. In the other corner we can see a dead robot and the lifeless body of Magnificus behind these boxes. This robot's square head resembles the head of the final form of the Stoat's, I guess, D-transformation. The true name and identity of the Stoat is P03. Now, the name resembling the, Poe of the Edgar Allan variety is not lost on me. What it means, I'm not entirely sure. P03 is the brainy, cold, calculating counterpart to these three other scribes. He reminds me a lot of the AI in chess games that's constantly beating you. No matter what move you do, it just knows a better move. And it's reflected as such in his personality as the Stoat. No matter where you put him on the board, he always says, "Bad play," or "Are you sure you want to put me here?" Now, this was an off-the-cuff realization I made in the footage that got lost, but I do want to bring it up. P03 is an overall unlikable character. Nobody really likes him. He's very noxious in certain ways. In some parts of me thinks that maybe that is Lionel. Well, yeah, that would make sense that Lionel would be inside of P03, or that character would bubble up, because then he's represented by a stoat, which is like a weasel. But I also was reminded a bit of Valamir. We'll see the processor that P03 uses to inscribe his cards reminds me a lot of the container that Valamir was kept in. I feel like their mouths look the same too, but that might just be the design of Daniel Mullins' characters. Like I said, my ideas and thoughts about the true identity of P03 are still kind of flimsy. The more I ruminate on it, Lionel just seems like it makes a lot of sense. But that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. I'm sorry. That reminds me. Remember when we saw that ghoulish hand retreat from behind the safe? Was that the hand of one of these dead bodies? I wonder if the positioning is intentional. It may just be that the hand that was retreating behind the safe, pointing us towards the safe to open it up and free the stink bug, simply belonged to the true identity of the stink bug, Grimora, the likable, necromantic counterpart of the four major characters of the larger Inscryption. She's all about death and rewarding the character for chewing through their cards. And thusly, this is where the bone mechanic comes in. That's her associated economy, just as blood is associated to Leshy. So it's only fitting that directly behind the wall where her arm kind of retreats into behind the safe, on the other side of that wall is that pile of dead bodies. Just thematically, that's very fitting. But otherwise, I don't really know why we don't find her dead or lifeless body inside of that room. Maybe it's silly to think that there's, that you could kill death personified. And all that's left is to interact with the new game button. Evidently, the light it's giving off was what was glowing behind the door when we were inside Leshy's cabin. This one works and truly wipes the slate clean, unlike the glitched new game button in the main menu. We click the button and it disappears, concluding Act 1. With nothing else to do in this dark room, we go to the start menu, and with the new game button restored, we now have access to the true form of Inscryption. But we won't explore that until Chapter 2. Oh boy. You owe me some sushi. Why do I owe you sushi? Listen, pal, wearing my hair down to read a script was not part of our final deal. Part of our deal was not to let meta-narrative stuff bleed into the actual video. Now people are going to have a hard time figuring out where this narrative starts and ends and where ours starts and ends. Let me go ahead and tease the next chapter for you. This whiteboard is incomplete. When we start a new game, we overwrite Leshy's game. Thus is the opening sequence of Chapter 2 of Inscryption, the true form of this game.
In the beginning, the world did not know cards. That is, until the day the scribes arrived. Each had their own method of inscription to create cards. Grimora used her quill to inscribe the epitaphs of the dead. Leshy used the wildlife camera to capture beasts. P03 used a particle scanner to copy the CPUs of robots. And Magnificus used his brush to paint his wizard pupils. With the cards created, the scribes had solidified their power. Until one day a challenger arrived to replace one of the scribes.
So, while Leshy has sealed and inscribed away all of his counterparts, a clearly hostile act, I think it's quite evident that he respects some more than others. For example, Grimora, or as we knew her, the stink bug, is the principality of the bone economy. And so Leshy graciously implemented her aspect into his game. He didn't like the energy aspect, he didn't like the gem aspect, I don't blame him for that one, but he liked the bone. Could it be that Grimora is just so likable that even Leshy felt compelled to include her, or at least part of her aspect in his project? Or he just likes the thematic nature of it, naturally. Blood, bones, flesh, and marrow. Even gameplay design-wise, I think the sort of self-consumption of Leshy's sacrificial cannibalism works very well with the necromantic incentivization to recklessly throw your cards at your enemies with no care as to how many of them die. Both have this sort of self-cannibalistic nature that go hand in hand. Heavy early game, not as in your head and technical, unlike the gem mechanic, and not as super late game, unlike the energy mechanic. I will say this though. If these two characters have some level of kindredness with one another, could it be that their motives also merge together as well? I'm not sure if this theory will pan out by the end of this series, but right now I'm having an inkling that Leshy is derived from Lucifer from Pony Island. He wants to capture souls, and with these captured souls, he wants to make inscribed cards and make a fun game. And in this case, he succeeded. Lucifer is the same way. The character Lucifer, I should say, from Pony Island, wants to capture your soul. And also, while you're here, you want to play my game? I don't want to jump the gun here. As much as satisfying as it would be, I don't want to jump the gun here. But I'm going to link Grimora to the Hopeless Soul. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Hopeless Soul's motivation in Pony Island was for the player to uninstall the game so it could achieve freedom. I'm not going to reveal exactly what Grimora's motives are, but hand in hand, perfect. It's basically, we're going to see that reemerge in her motivations nearly perfectly. And there's all sorts of other stuff. There's some linkings to, there's the fact that the stink bug was locked away in the safe with 273. The password to Hopeless Soul's desktop in Pony Island was 2734. I'm somewhat confident about the character Lucifer from Pony Island, the sprite, the text, all that stuff, bubbling from beneath the surface into Leshy's character, and I'm somewhat confident of Hopeless Soul, the character from Pony Island, bubbling up from down beneath the surface and into Grimora. Now, this next concept, I want to hold a lot more closer to my chest, mainly because we have yet to see all the evidence, and there's one perfect evidence that ties it all together, but we don't see it until Act 2. So I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna hold this close to the chest. Who I think magnificus, who's bubbling up from beneath the surface. Survey says you'll have to wait till Act 2. So the identity, not true identity, just the bubbling up motifs that inhabit magnificus, we'll reveal in the next chapter. P03. The Stoat. He perplexes me even now. I have it written in my script. He perplexes me. A lot less so after this recording session. The Stoat and the Weasel are mammalian cousins of sorts, so I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking that the Stoat is Super Weasel Kid from the Hex. But that's just a bit too obvious for me. And in the end, a repeating motif doesn't necessarily indicate an identical identity. You could say the same thing about all these theories I'm cooking up right now. But nonetheless, I think there's something more to it. In fact, maybe we're on the right track by thinking of Super Weasel Kid, but we just have to go a little bit deeper. I'm leaning towards P03's identity coming up from beneath the surface, bubbling up from Lionel, from the character Lionel. They're both stubborn game designers, vaguely unlikable, with an affinity to mustelids. Is that how you pronounce it? Mustelids? But the reason why I'm just so hesitant to assign Lionel to P03 is because Lionel is a human character in the Mullins verse. He is not a product of the GameWorks. He is external to it. Now, if it turns out that a lot more fingers point towards Lionel being trapped in the identity of this, or perhaps like a copy of him of sorts, perhaps in Weasel Kid. So maybe it is Weasel Kid. But regardless, it's a scary thought to have an AI of yourself being copied into a thing and being, oh yeah, a part of the GameWorks. Oh, that's like your soul being taken from you. Something's here. We'll keep moving. Nonetheless, Lucifer, Lionel, Hopeless Soul, I have no idea. We'll just have to find out in Act 2. In Chapter 2, we're going to explore more in depth the various servitors of Leshy, the Prospector, Angler, trader slash trapper, and also the various servitors of the other scribes of Inscryption. I hesitate to put the Bone Lord, Woodcarver, and the Mycologist in the camp of Leshy, even though 2 out of 3 of them have masks that he uses, only because later in this game they're going to act more like free agents. They're not necessarily servitors, but they are very important characters that we will keep an eye on in these next chapters. Once we have all the various servitors and minor side characters accounted for, we'll be able to place a much more clear picture together in the next chapter. This whiteboard's a bit messy, but it kind of harkens back to Chapter 2 of Faith. Simpler times. There's a lot of different aspects to Inscryption. There's the card game design itself, there's the cipher-based ARG, and a lot of very talented people have broken apart and scoured those aspects of the game. Any one of you can go ahead and scour EXO's freaking amazing catalog of just cool little quirks of the Inscryption game design. Any one of you can go into Jack 0_0 or any of the other guides regarding the ARG and appreciate it for what it is, appreciate the hard work a lot of other people did. I want to bring something unique to the table. And while we will, in our little tour, appreciate all these things that a bunch of other people have appreciated, I want to kind of hone in on seeing if we can catch these literary morsels that Daniel Mullins has either intentionally or unintentionally left for us. Many people have enjoyed this game, but I feel like few people have really made sense of the story. We all have kind of a vague understanding. Yeah, well, this happens, and that happens, and then some crazy transcendence things happen, and then, oh geez, that happened. But no, I want to really make sense of the story, the start, the finish, the whys, the whats, the hows. And on our way, keep track of all the patterns, the motifs, the themes that rhyme with each other within Inscryption and with other concepts from the Hex and Pony Island. And those are ultimately the prongs of what I want to do with this series. Make sense of the main story, the hidden story, and the secret story. Keep track of all those various motifs, patterns, and whatnot, and perhaps discover new ways of looking at this game, appreciating this game's story. That may lead to novel analysis. So what do I think we should keep in mind for the coming videos? Sato is a given. If you've beaten Inscryption and you've slowed down certain footage, you'll know why that is. On top of that, keep Jeremiah in mind. And some other characters from the Hex you should keep in mind are Lionel, the game dev from the Hex, and maybe Reginald, the boss of Jeremiah. Maybe. Of course, speaking of the Hex, we must keep in mind Gamefuna, the company that owns all the various games in the Hex, and of course owns Inscryption. Specifically, we should also keep in mind Lunatus, the CEO of Gamefuna. Separately from that Lucifer, perhaps keep Lucifer from Pony Island in mind, as well as Hopeless Soul. That's more for a pet project analysis of mine. Won't be super important, but at the very least I'll keep it in mind. Over time, we may forget about this Ouroboros, this concept of self-cannibalizing loops, jumping into a part of a continuity we have no idea where on the Ouroboros we have entered. But I think this sleeper theme will reawaken at the very end of our investigation. So keep this in mind as well. Carnoffel itself will re-emerge in the third act of Inscryption, well, specifically the ARG aspect. Keep in mind that Douse card, the fact that it rings a bell, all these various tentacles, one of them ringing a bell as well. That mirror as well, that mirror is also going to play somewhat of a role, I think, in the ARG. I'll say this now, though. Being that 2 of 3 of the items that tentacles are bringing up, dredging up, if you will, from the surface or beneath the surface, come from the Carnoffel game, the bell and the cards, perhaps this tentacle is looking for aspects of Carnoffel deep beneath the surface. It's appropriate I mention this now as well, even though we explored it in the previous whiteboard. Keep the 4 pre-existing death cards in mind: Reginald, Louis, Kaminsky, and Casey. These 4 play a significant role in the inception of Inscryption, the Carnoffel Carnival, the mystery of misery. In the end, it goes without saying, you don't really need to keep anything in mind. This is just, for me, I'm keeping everything in mind. Pray for me. Thank you all so much for your patience, your enthusiasm, your support. Thank you so much to the patrons, to the fan artists, and to every single one of you who is taking this channel to 45 subscribers. I don't even, there's no words. There's just no words. At this point, there's no flipping words. I lost words. I lost the words in my brain, my think noggin, at 1K. I can't even count past 5. Please, if you haven't given Inscryption a try, this is your chance. You might think, oh, we've covered so much, this was fun, I was crocheting, I maybe should have put my stuff down and played the game. You still have plenty of time. A lot of time, actually, because this project's pretty hefty. Play the game. This is just the surface. We're barely beneath the surface. Play Inscryption or give any other Daniel Mullins games a try. If you have time for just one game, well, I would just say pick the most expensive one because I think Daniel Mullins deserves all the money. But I would say storyline-wise, context-wise, to enjoy this upcoming series, I think the Hex might be the best thing to play. Or if you got 5 hours to kill, you could just watch my video. Buy the game. Don't watch my video. Buy the game. They're all genuinely great games. Pony Island, I love it because it's kind of a capsule of the era of indie gamings of its time. It's like a time capsule. Anyways, Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy New Year if this doesn't come out until after the New Year. I'll see you in part 2 of my deep dive into Inscryption. Masalama, sudasutun, hasta luego. I'll see you soon. This final boss fight's meaningless. Maybe it is you, but there's only one way to find out.
The whole gang's back together. But now what? Without me to host... You've done well, player. But your servitors aren't finished yet. I offer you an out.
I gotta keep going.
See this through. Don't let history repeat itself. This is our chance. Play us all and let us be free of this. You can use our claws and beaks to cut the fishing line. Or you could just press enter and skip your turn.